So it's over there. Okay, so there's one there. I think you should be closer.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm calling the select board meeting to order at 6:31 on October 18th, 2022. So as always, we start off with public comment for anything the public wants to talk about that's not specifically on the agenda. If you want to talk about something on the agenda, wait till that item comes up and then you can talk then. So, okay. So, Mr. Sabelli, is this going to upset you if you were to step back for a few minutes? So, because the only place we can have people come is here.
Sure.
And remember, we do a public comment at the end too, so you won't lose the chance. Hold on a second. Sorry. Mr. Miller, I saw you first.
Kevin Miller, 18 Ladisquama Road. Just for the record, chair of the Historical Commission. And as little as I know you really want to hear about this right now, I'd like to just address a couple comments about the flag situation. I know it was dealt with at town meeting last week, but because it was covered extensively at your September 25th meeting, Historical was also meeting that night, so I wasn't able to be here. I saw that you had the issue on your agenda, and I went home and listened to the tape, and Historical was discussed extensively during that meeting, and also, of course, it came up at town meeting, which caused me to get up and speak. But I hope you'll give me just a couple minutes to touch on a few points that I think are really, really important in this conversation, because, unfortunately, as little, frankly, as I want to get involved in it right now, I don't think the matter is settled. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon the select board to take it up again and consider it at some point in the future. It's very difficult for me. I tried to express this at town meeting last week that I have no desire to sort of tussle with the VSOs in town or that constituency, in large part because I'm very sympathetic to their beliefs and their cause. But I think sometimes the highest test of loyalty to a friend or a group or even to a cause is to stand up and tell your friends that you think they're in error. And I think they are in error on this point. I want to just say for the record, because I didn't get a chance to on September 25th, that when I saw that you folks had this question, whether to ask Historical for a recommendation on your agenda, I saw it. I had already done a good deal of work on the subject because I knew it was an important subject and I expected it to come across, into my purview at some point. But when I saw it in your agenda on the 25th, we were meeting that night. And I went to my commission meeting and I said, under other business, I said, well, look, this thing has come up. And if we get asked, I want you to be ready. I want you to go home and do your independent work, your own homework, make your own decisions, do your own research, forget about the past, whatever Historical, before I even arrived in Historical, whatever those kerfuffles have been, I'm not interested. I just want you to figure it out on your own. If the select board asks us, I will call a meeting forthwith. We will take up the matter, hack it out together, and try to come to a recommendation. And I expected the recommendation, by the way, not to be the last word with you, but just to be input that would be balanced out with whatever the veterans groups had to say. So of course, when it was voted down, I was disappointed, but of course I didn't take it personally. I mean, I knew everybody had their reasons or whatever they were. I wasn't really interested in what they were. I thought, well, okay, it'll go to town meeting and we'll all discuss it there. I do think that Historical was entitled to discuss it, but again, out of respect to this board, I decided that it was inappropriate for me to call any kind of meeting prior to town meeting. So that's why I was in the position of having to sort of stand up and speak as a private individual, but acknowledging that I have this connection with the commission. So a couple points I'd like to make. With regard to the flags, I mean, everybody's done their research, and I did my independent research, and it was interesting to hear the VSO representatives express the opinion. I believe Mr. Kalenda talked about this, that it wasn't really material to him that, for instance, the Gadsden flag and the Moultrie flag, otherwise the Liberty flag, for instance, have their origins in South Carolina. It wasn't particularly relevant to him that the Damari Nolo flag, which is a Pennsylvania Rifles flag, has its origins elsewhere. His contention was, or his position was, those flags are historical to the period. He believes in them. They mean a lot to him and his fellow veterans. And, I have to say that that's an assertion, a position that as chair of historical commission, I wouldn't personally take, but that I accept at face value. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable position for someone like Mr. Kalenda and Mr. Wynot to take. They don't care. I believe Mr. Kalenda said, I don't know if anybody in that burial ground over there carried one of those flags, but it doesn't matter to me that they're representative of the times and the spirit of the era, and they mean a lot to us, and we want to keep them. I thought, fair enough. That's a decent position to take, and I respect it. At the same time, and by the way, I also take the vets absolutely at face value that they really resent the way some of these flags have been co-opted by certain extremist groups. And they don't want them taken from them. I respect that opinion. And I frankly, in my core, I feel the same way. I would be exactly the same way. Don't take my flag away from me just because some nut was carrying it in DC on January 6th. At the same time, I also take the anti-flag folks and their assertion that some of those flags really upset them very deeply and very emotionally, and for reasons about the way they have already been co-opted. I take those folks at face value as well. So I honestly, I'm able to see both sides. I'm very sympathetic to the veterans' positions for reasons I think I stated at town meeting. But intellectually, I understand the side of the veterans, I respect it, and I believe that they hold a tenable position. I also accept the anti-flag folks at face value, and I don't think they're just trumping up a bunch of nonsense to cause trouble. I think they really believe and are triggered by these flags. You don't mind me using a sort of current colloquialism. I have a little trouble with Mr. Wynot's position that as Veterans Grave agent, he is also somehow superintendent of the old burial ground. They make a kind of interesting argument where, it's funny that the anti-flag people say, well, those flags are stuck in the graves. They're stuck in the graves. They're stuck in the graves. I never seen the proof of that, to be quite honest with you. On the other side, the VSO representatives say, well, those flags aren't, and Mr. Kalenda was quite passionate on this point. Those flags are not in veterans' graves. Well, if they're not in veterans' graves, why is the veterans' graves agent placing them, right? He doesn't, he's not the commissioner of the old burial ground. He's the veterans graves agent. And he does a wonderful job, by the way. And I was delighted at town meeting to hear that he and his folks and those groups are responsible for putting up the flags all along Main Street in the spring and taking them down in the fall. I love those flags. When they go up, they make me so happy because I walk downtown all the time. I'm thrilled to see them go up. I was so happy to learn that, I didn't catch the woman's name. Was it Bonnie Faniff who helps tend the individual flags in the, God bless her, and thank you for that, because I'm the same kind of nut. When my wife and I walk downtown, we are always stopping to pick flags that have blown out of their holders up and put them back. And if the stick is broken, I'm trying to run around and figure out which one has a half broken stick in the holder and get it right, And then the worst of it for me is when the staple is rusted and the flag's off, and I was on my hands and knees in front of the townhouse, right out here, trying to jury rig one of those a couple weeks ago because the staple had come off and the flag's down, and I think that's disrespectful, and I'm trying to fix it. So that's my natural inclination. I'm very grateful to Mr. Wynot, Ms. Faniff, all the stuff they do. But, you know, again, so this is why, in an attempt to try to find a middle ground here, like a way that would satisfy everybody, this is why I went to the expedient of contacting the folks at the National Cemetery in Bourne. Again, as I indicated at town meeting. But I want to clarify a couple of points in this, because when I reached out to those folks, and as I said, the conversation involved the public relations associate, the assistant director, and the director of the cemetery, because they wanted to give me the exact right answer. And the question I posed was, what flags are displayed at the National Cemetery in Bourne? This is 750 acres adjacent to Otis Air Force Base, and there are 80,000 veterans buried there. What is respectful treatment for veterans at the National Cemetery in Bourne? And the answer was the American flag, POW MIA flag, often on the same standard just below. That's similar to what we have at the All Veterans Memorial down the hill here. And once a year on Memorial Day is the flag of the Department of Veterans Services. And that's it. And I specifically asked, do you fly battle flags, right, at any time under any circumstances? Answer, no, we don't. And what I wanted to add here tonight was to make it clear for everybody, but this is not a local, this is not some whimsy on the part of the folks in Bourne. This stuff comes down from, VA, of course, is a cabinet level department. It comes down from DC. The same standard applies to all the national cemeteries, including Arlington National Cemetery. They never, under any circumstances now, fly battle or commemorative flags. And it makes sense if you think about it for a moment, because, you know, we're not talking about battle reenactments, right? This is not, you know, every April in Lexington and Concord where we haul those flags out and try to, you know, give a kind of commemorative display. A cemetery is a place of quiet rest, right? Where the veteran is reunited in a cemetery like this, which is a civilian cemetery, was reunited with their wives and with their children. It's not a place to, you know, beat the drums of war. It's a place of peace. And so it seemed to me when I discovered the answer from the National Cemetery people that there's one, you know, that there's only one flag that besides POW MIA beneath, we fly the American flag. I look over there and I say, we've got one permanently installed flagpole, and then we've got this sort of ad hoc array. And the argument that, well, we've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it's been, you know, I would just say that the repetition of an error doesn't lessen its status as an error. It only increases the urgency to try to rectify it. And so, you know, again, it seemed to me that you've got an opportunity to unite the town under one flag, the flag that we all should be able to agree on. And you know, it bothers me sometimes to think that I really want to point out to my friends on the VSO side that, you know, patriotism is not the exclusive domain of, you know, the American Legion or the VFW, that there's some of us that feel very, very passionately about this and want to do the right thing. And I want to say, for the Historical Commission, to the VSOs, you have a friend in us, you have an ally in us, and we want to serve the veterans in the best way possible. So to that end, you know, I know, and I could hear the passion in Mr. Kalenda's voice and Mr. Wynot's voice, and I was sitting over in the side of the room where it was really very heavily that their supporters, and I could feel their emotion, and I was affected by it. And I think to myself, to ask those folks to give up in the name of the pluralistic society that they served for and fought for, in some cases died for, to ask them to give something up is very difficult. And I understand it, right? Those folks, they didn't get where they are by ceding ground. So in asking them to give something up, this array of flags, I would like to make a gesture toward giving something back. And what I think would be appropriate to give back to them is, you know, Sally Waters has done research, and actually Mr. Kalenda and Mr. Wynot seem to be in agreement on this point, that of the roughly, Sally's research has 54 veterans of the American Revolution, the OBG, with half of them in unmarked graves. What I would propose, and I'd like to take the specifics of this back to the Historical Commission for consideration and their comment, because they deserve to weigh in on this. They haven't had the chance yet. But my notion as chair, and this is something I'd like to put to them, is us to find a way to mark those graves, or to have some sort of marker that would list all of the unmarked graves of veterans of wars in the OBG that currently are not marked or commemorated in any way, something that would be far more permanent than a flag array, right? So that I want to give them something that would be meaningful to them and that would help them, and with their input, obviously. But I think it's going to, finally, the reason I voted for that article is because I felt it should come back to the select board. Of course, that was just an advisory proposal, but that I thought it should come back to the select board. And I hope that at some point in the near future, you'll take it up seriously, work with us, offer us some agency in the discussion, and let's see if we can make some progress in uniting the town. And again, in honoring the veterans the way they deserve to be honored and the way they deserve to be marked. Because I thought, here's an answer, right? You know, first of all, the national standard for honoring veterans in military cemeteries in this country is one flag. No commemorative flags, no battle flags. It's a place of peace and rest, not a place to remind people of battles and war, right? But if we're going to ask the veterans to give that up, something that means a lot to them locally. And I would say the last thing I want to say about this is, you know, I have no desire, for instance, to get very picky about the matter of even those individual flags and graves, but I would point out to you that, you know, the standard for that is in the National Cemetery, they go flags up on Memorial Day weekend and they come down, all those individual grave flags, before the gates open on Tuesday after Memorial Day. And that's a matter of respect. So they don't get blown off, disturbed. But I'm not interested in meddling in local practice on that score. That's a matter for the veterans and their agents. Same thing with the array of flags. I've heard some talk about it's not exactly to official standard, and from what I see, it might not be. But I have no interest in that, because that's, to me, that's specifically the veterans area, and they should control it in the manner that they see fit. But on the matter of the old burial ground, which of course, you know, the most of those burials are women and children, alas, civilians, that I think the principle of one flagpole and one flag should prevail. And like I said, because I am very, very sensitive to veterans' concerns, I'd like to see if we could do something for them that would honor in a permanent way and mark in a permanent way the graves that are currently unmarked. So I took way too much of your time, but I really, really thank you for allowing me to sort of clarify. And again, I know you're in a tough spot. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. And but again, I just felt that I had a duty, both by virtue of the seat I hold, but also by conscience. Like I said, it's really hard sometimes to tell your friends that you think they're mistaken, but I think they are. And I think happily there's a way out to make everybody feel whole here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
One comment before I'm going to allow 2 more comments, 3 minutes each, so we can keep going. We've got to get to the rest of the agenda quickly. There'll be another session of public comment at the end. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that those are here know that we have taken off the executive session tonight to consider certain aspects of the request by Hopkinton to connect to the water system. So if you're here for that, you still speak for, like, do 2 or at the end. But it has been taken off. We will have some way to it back on either probably the November 1st agenda, is what I suspect. So we got a whole lot of comments about that executive session. We listened, we took it off, and Therefore, we will not be talking to tonight at all, if that is relevant to anybody's comment. Okay, so Ms. Shimkus. You do it 3 minutes?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. It's difficult for me to be
Can
here
you-
at night for family reasons, so I was hoping to just squeeze in very quickly.
Can you say who you were?
Sorry, Karen Shimkus, Limerick Road. Some of these are just broad policy matters and another is just opposing opinion. Opposition opinion, I'm just very disappointed to witness open hostility towards voters who express opposing opinions. The lack of receptivity is not warranted. Residents who present opposing opinions should be welcomed and respected. Residents expressing opposing legal opinions are not the enemy and shouldn't be viewed as adversarial. Opposition opinion should be welcome. It's a hallmark of democracy and town hall government. It results in better policies, improved performance, and less mistakes. Special town meeting. I unfortunately was unable to attend for family reasons, but I understand that there was a misogynist comment made towards Ms. DeMaria. I think she's owed a written apology. It's unacceptable. And as a professional woman, decades in the business, downtown Boston, long time, see something, say something, I'm saying something. This is terrible and I expect leadership out of this. I expect you to really demand the same. Sending the message that I'm a lawyer and you're not implies that we're smarter than you are and we know more than you do. You do not. Law is highly specialized these days. Legal opinions can differ and residents know how to hire and work with multiple employees, lawyers, okay? Like it or not, resulting in high quality legal opinions. Attorneys are not gods, they're vendors. And high quality legal opinions are often offered to you. I'm curious as to why there's been no receptivity of opinions offered that are opposing, but in good faith, because they could help you. They could help you understand where mistakes are being made. Open government and transparency, discussions out of the public eye in forums. As a taxpayer and a voter, I expect openness, transparency, and accountability. And frankly, lately, it's been everything but. There's been an express chipping away at voter voice, opposition opinion, and transparency. I would like to see behind closed doors deals end. It's not mandatory. You can appoint yourselves liaison to anything, whatever, but it's caused discord and controversy and mistakes. I'd like to see deal making out of the public eye end. This also means giving away public money, promises to develop, or give away public assets, whether it be land or water. Now here comes your opposing opinion. If St. Mark's or Hopkinton or anyone else wants something, they can come right here and sit in that seat. Okay? For a full discussion in front of the public, and preferably a vote should be put before town voters on town assets. Again, it's not mandatory, but it would be appreciated. Opposing opinion, St. Mark's Triangle. Mass General Law does not allow the granting of an easement or rights in real property without a town meeting vote, period. Mass General Law does not allow the spending of public money on private property, period. Not looking for contortions on this, and I'm not looking for remedies or contorted legal opinion. And as a taxpayer, I'm not paying for it. And I'll withhold it payment at town meeting. I'm not looking to correct mistakes on projects that I never asked for. I never asked for a park. I never asked for a parking lot. And especially in a period of skyrocketing inflation, costs, taxes, our seniors, we're on fixed incomes. The tree doesn't grow through the sky here. Plus, we have other spending priorities. We need essential clarification, okay? Because you have no legal authority to proceed. with a transfer of public land or public assets without permission from town meeting floor voters. It's important that before you do anything, you make it clear to everyone in this room and listening what you're doing and what you're intending to do, and on what legal authority.
Ms. Shen, because this one actually is on the agenda.
I know, and I'm sorry.
I say you have to leave, so you've got to leave.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
I do.
Okay.
Here's the last sentence. In the last meeting, you made a reference to an MOU. Is it your intention to execute or record a deed or a quitclaim deed? Frankly, a quitclaim deed has nothing to do with anything. Okay? Just another instrument, but it's a transfer of real property rights. So you have to know what you're doing and whether or not it's legal. And in my opinion, it isn't. And I have legal opinions that say it isn't. But I'd love for you to come and ask why it isn't. Now, if town's council said it was okay, is there a written legal opinion? Did he offer one to that effect? Where is it posted? And is it true, last question, is it true that you intend to go around the town meeting directive? Not mandatory, but do you intend to go around that almost unanimous vote from the town saying, stop? So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Okay, it is almost 7 o'clock, so I'm going to cut off this public comment until we get to the end, so we're going to have to wait for the rest of them to get to the agenda. Okay, so with that, we've got 2 public hearings that we're going to start with. Welcome, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Members of the Board of Assessors.
So, yes, Kathy is a board assessor.
Sorry, before you start, I'm concerned we have a hand raised for public comment. Others were allowed to speak over the 3 minutes, and we're now telling someone else that has a hand raised that they have to wait until the end. I'm sorry, I don't want it to come back on the board that we're not allowing, we asked for public comment, we're not allowing when someone else is.
We are going to allow it at the end of it. Okay, go ahead.
So the Southborough Board of Selectmen shall hold a public hearing with the Board of Assessors Tuesday, October 18th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. to determine the certified valuation of each class of property, the minimum residential factor, and the allocation of the tax burden among the 4 classes of real property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. Public hearing will be held in Call Hearing Room, Townhouse, 17 Congress Street, Southborough. The meeting may also be viewed by the public through a link located at www.southboroughtown.com/meetings. All interested parties are encouraged to view and participate. Additionally, interested citizens may present written views prior to the public hearing.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sabelli.
Good evening, board members. I want to welcome the public to our annual classification hearing. Joining me tonight is the Board of Assessors, Jeffrey Klein, Tammy Rice, Keith Wittes, and our Deputy Assessor, Lori Esposito. I want to thank Lori for doing a wonderful job updating our presentation. The Select Board Chair has asked me to do an abbreviated version of our presentation that we sent you last week, so that's what you get. So we're going to get going and buzz through this. What is tax classification? Allows communities to have different tax rates for certain classes of property: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property, which we'll refer to as CIP. State statute provides a maximum allowable portion of the tax levy, up to 150%, to be borne by the CIP classes. Provides a minimum allowable portion to be borne by the residential class. Tax classification, key concepts. Classification does not raise additional dollars from the property tax, but serves to distribute how much levy will be raised from each class. Allows the select board to make the decision whether or not to shift tax burden from one class of property to another. Town of Southborough has never had a split rate. This is an issue of fairness between property classes. Fiscal year assessments. The 23 assessments are based on analysis of calendar year 2021 sales and market conditions. The FY23 assessments reflect the value of properties as of January 1, 2022. Calendar year 22 sales and market conditions will be reflected in the FY 24 assessments, as there is a 1-year time lag in the assessment process. That's per DOR, by the way. That's not a self-built thing. What is happening to assessments? The town's total taxable value increased by $385.5 million to a new high of $3.241 billion in FY 23. This is an increase of 13.5%. I started my first classification in 2000, and we just cracked $1 billion. So we're already over 3 in 21 years. Overall assessments are on the rise. Residential class increased 15.88%. I don't think anybody's surprised based on the 21 market. Commercial class increased 3.53%, and the industrial class increased 5.12%. Personal property decreased 1.02%. Couple of things to remember. Personal property in general is a depreciating asset. Also, decrease in personal property our decrease this year can really be attributed to Olympus, a $4.4 million account, approximately $65,000 to $70,000, relocating to Westboro. Let's take a look at the average single-family assessed value. It increased 113,500 to 803,500, a 15.88% increase. Average commercial industrial mixed-use assessment value that increased 128,000, 3,272,900, a 4.07% increase. I do want to mention really quick, we always look at average. If you looked at the median commercial building, it'd be somewhere in the mid 900s. So the large, the large buildings obviously skew this quite a bit.
What about houses?
What's that? I do have it. It's 7.
You've got it on. It's the average is 803.5.
Yeah, it's
the
later.
median is 730.
Okay, so again, high prices skew that into.
A little bit. Okay, if we continue with a single tax rate, the 23 tax would significantly decrease from $16.28, sorry, to $14.76. It's about a 9.3%, I think, decrease. The average single-family tax bill would rise from $11,233 in 22 to $11,860 in 23. It's about $627 or a 5.58% increase. Okay, the larger than anticipated tax increase is due to the residential market rising steeply, far outpacing the moderate increases in the commercial industrial market. The average commercial industrial mixed use tax bill would decrease from $51,199 to $48,308, or a 5.64% decrease. Again, this is because the residential market is completely outpacing the normal increases you would see in a commercial and industrial market. Relationship of classes, commercial, industrial, and personal property classes combined represent 17.18% of the town's total value. This is down from the previous year of 18.87. Again, we can attribute that to the single-family market going crazy. The Board of Assessors unanimously recommends continuing with a single tax rate for fiscal year 2023. I'm going to move right on quickly to the other tax shift options, the residential exemption and the small commercial exemption. Unlike the split rate option that shifts burden from one class to another, both the residential and small commercial exemptions shift burden within the property class. As with the split rate, no additional taxes are raised by either of these exemptions. Although Southborough is not a likely candidate to adopt either of these two exemptions, they must be presented and a formal vote be taken by the select board to complete our classification hearing. Let's talk a little bit about the residential exemption. Shifts tax burden within the residential class from the lower assessed properties to seasonal, rental, or higher assessed properties. Typically, this exemption is adopted in areas with a low rate of owner occupancy. Examples would be communities with lots of rental property, like a Boston or a Cambridge, or lots of seasonal properties, such as Barnstable and Nantucket. There's only about 16 towns out of 351 that have adopted the residential exemption. So again, not very popular. We don't have a lot of seasonal or rental properties, so it really doesn't apply here. The small commercial exemption. This exemption creates a tax burden shift that reduces the taxes paid by owners of properties occupied by small businesses and shifts them to large commercial and industrial taxpayers. Again, this is typically found in communities with large commercial and industrial bases, not a Southborough. Southborough certainly isn't in that class. Only 14 towns out of the 351 have adopted a small commercial exemption. Again, the Board of Assessors unanimously recommends not to adopt the residential and small commercial exemptions as they are not relevant to this community. Madam Chair, you wanted the quick one? So further action items, select board discussion, public comment, select board vote on the three that we had mentioned. The single split tax rate, residential exemption, and small commercial exemption. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much. Sure. Okay, so let's start with you with questions, comments, or
Yes, so I am comfortable with the recommendation of the Board of Assessors. This is now the second tax assessment hearing that I've had. The information is very similar to the first, but the one slide in here that I don't know if you had a chance to highlight it, but it's the one that I found significant the last time is, if you were to actually implement this, the slide you have about tax shift impact using both average value and median value, where you do.
We can bring those up.
Okay,
Again, we've got kind of
that's very.
give us a second so people can see what.
It basically shows to decrease the residential tax bill by 1%, which is the savings is between $110 and $121. You increase the commercial and industrial rate by 5%, but just because the ratio, it's just not a community where it's like a 50% commercial, industrial, 50% residential, and that problem is going to get worse and worse as this ratio goes away from 80-20 more to. That's been a big takeaway of the last couple of budget cycles. Is there's an enormous difference from going 80-20 to 81-19, 80. So yeah, so that's why you would save $100 on the average residential bill, and you would increase the average commercial industrial by 5%, which here would be $2,400. So I think that's been the most compelling point for me.
Sam?
As folks know, in the past, I have considered the split tax rate. I don't think now is the right time to do that, so I'm satisfied with the recommendation.
I as well agree with Mr. Stivers that now is not the time. Again, I know we're looking at how we can increase commercial businesses in town, specifically on Route 9. We've kind of said this before as well. We don't have a lot of the amenities that these other towns offer, sewer being the main point. I think it's a continued discussion, but as of tonight, I support the recommendation of the assessors.
Chelsea?
Thank you, Mr. Savelli and Board of Assessors for coming, and Mrs. Zito. Do you mind just touching on the assumptions that you had for the FY23 budget and what led to specifically what we assumed in terms of a shift, and that it was actually more than that shift, and that's why what we said at town meeting, it was a little bit higher in terms of.
Yeah, so
percentage.
let's just kind of review what we had talked about. We had put together some scenarios because we knew the values of the residential the shift was going to be significant. In doing the budgeting or going through the budgeting process, if you all remember, we ran a scenario 8%, 10%, 12%, 14%. 8% we ruled out right away. We knew that was going to be well shy. So we were looking kind of at a 10 to 12%. I kind of ruled out 14%. Whoops. Chelsea basically said let's go with 12. I think that's gives us a little wiggle room. Well, Chelsea.
So this is Chelsea's fault.
Nope, 100% mine.
It could have been worse.
100% mine. And again, you know, you're looking very, very early if we wind back to town meeting. I always hate giving any type of indication because we don't have all the data back. We don't know what the commercial and industrial, we don't have the income and expense statements back, and obviously personal property, we don't get back in 3 or 4 months. We have no idea. The residential, I've been doing this for 23 years. I have never, ever seen increases like this. This is probably 4 increases in 1 year, 4 good increases in 1 year. Would have thought the market would go up that much. You know, I thought 12 was good, Chelsea. I really did.
Yeah.
And really, it's just once you start breaking down the numbers, you're like, wow, this is, and I think one of the contributing factors I do want to say, which would drag up the average, again, I hate to use average, but that's what the DOR always uses, is the average single family home. You go back to 18, 19, 20, the upper market was very sluggish in Southborough. Kind of left a lot of people scratching their heads. And that just took off. Finally, that was one of the best deals in town when you really looked at the different price segments. And that just skyrocketed a lot higher than I thought. I hadn't had the time to break the sales down. I did some very, very general looking, but when you start breaking down and building the value model. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shot in the dark. The thing we can take away with, we did recognize we needed to do something, and we did that. But again, it is very, very early, and it's just not something you're going to be able to pinpoint accurately. It really isn't, especially in a market just that wild.
Right. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the public understood
Yep.
kind of what went into the FY23 planning, and I would assume that we'll do something similar for FY24 because it sounds like this isn't.
We will, and hopefully I have a little more time to break down. I mean, it's just been a crazy year.
Why do you think you'll have more time given town meeting was May last year?
I just think I'm hoping to do a little more preliminary in January, February. We just, on the residential, what you want to do is break the sales down and try to look a little bit at the price segment. So I'm hoping, and again, I'd kind of like to do some now, but the problem is you just don't know what the effect is the last, 3-4 months with the interest rates, how much that'll cool the market. We know it's going to go up. It's just, that may have an effect on, so, we kind of got to wait till we get into early January. But hopefully, again, it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but we're going to do our best. And remember, what I want to remind people is, if you take the shift away, we were what, under 2%?
We had a great.
I mean, it was a great budget. Everybody worked.
3% as far as the
Yeah.
overall increase. So
No.
now, it is a shame that gets lost in all this, that
It is.
we really did in a year of inflation, control the budget, and then no one's going to understand that when they get the tax bill.
And again, people, that's plain knowing we were going to have a big shift. We planned on having a shift, tighten the belt, and did a nice job with the budgets. We really did. So, we're going to be in the same boat. We're going to really, we don't have a ton of new growth. So it's going to be important to have another good budget year.
So,
I am, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing Jeff just mentioned, remember, this is not unique to Southborough. Everybody out here is going through that.
absolutely.
Okay, so I think we did really well. I think you're going to see a lot of our counterparts see significantly bigger increases.
I think that's true too. You rank it pretty, came up pretty well with our peers. Okay, so let's go back to the, looking at Mr. Dyer, the possibility of split tax rate. So I was an advisor for many years. I've always been opposed to it, but always respected others' opinions and really tried to listen to what the philosophy was for split tax rate. And, go Boston, now we're not Boston. And I never heard, to me, a compelling argument for doing it. I understood the impact of it. I understood what several towns do it, but to me, if you're going to make the argument, then there's got to be some type of philosophy underpinning it. And if I were to make the argument, I can make the argument going the other way much better. Businesses don't use services that individual homes do. Individual homes, what's our budget? The schools, right? And if you throw the schools out, then they use very little of the budget. So why would you basically impact businesses when they're not the ones who serve? They're subsidizing their schools, so they're helping to do that. So I never could get to that piece of it. So I'm also opposed to split tax rate. We're going to You're gonna come up, don't worry. And we're gonna listen, I promise. But let's go back. You said one thing, and I think that you maybe misspoke for just a second. We did approve a split tax rate for a brief moment in time back in 2010 or so, and then it got reversed real quick. Is that not true?
In the hearing, yes. And then within about 12 hours, the Board of Selectmen or one certain person apparently had a buyer's remorse. Before I hit the button to submit it, they asked to hold it and wanted to have another hearing. So technically, we have never had a split rate. One has never been approved by the DOR. So no, we have never had one. That's not misspoke, but it is kind of funny. Yeah, I'll just tell you really quick. When we used to do classification, I used to write a one-page letter. I went to a PowerPoint presentation. Arthur Holmes, we all love Arthur. Arthur said, do not do a PowerPoint, you're giving them too much information. The Board of Selectmen will screw it up. What happens? We almost had a split rate. And we had to continue the hearing. And I just want you to know, I had to listen to that for the next 15 years of my career of him just busting me that I gave you too much information and you screwed it up.
So
Of course, it wasn't any of these members.
He blamed that on the vote to.
He voted on the fact we did not just read a letter. We did an actual PowerPoint presentation. We had to, we had to get out of the 40s for God's sake.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you guys very much. We
No problem.
will now hear some public comments. So why don't we need a photo? So why don't you two, so come on up, Mr. Geyer, you want to speak? So, sure. Laurie, can you do that? Yeah, it's right here. Come on up. Introduce yourself. So why don't you have something here?
Just real quick, Carl never likes this slide. We do have, actually, Carl, we prepared for you. Can you put up the one that has? And again, I mentioned this earlier. This is for Carl.
I'm a known quantity, yeah.
If you notice again, when I talked about the median value, it gives it a little bit better picture. But going back, if you look at the percentages below 5.01, 1.02, they don't change, as Andrew had.
Oh, yeah, the percentage, yeah.
We'll gear you up with that one, so you don't.
Well, my comment was that the previous slide was the one that's been used for years and years. I've seen this, and people always, it really biases when you see the dollar amount, people go for
So
the dollar
introduce
amount.
yourself.
What's that?
Introduce
Oh, yes,
yourself.
I'm Carl Dyer, 146 Mill Road.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, now I want to address a couple of things that you brought up. One is the usual thing we hear is businesses don't use the schools. There is nothing, there is no resource that businesses don't like better than educated people. Right? I mean, if you ever apply for a job, the first thing they want to know, other than your name and address and where you live and your social security number, is what's your education. One of the greatest consumers of education in the state or anywhere is business. They rely on educated people. So I'm not advocating that the businesses should pay for all education, but anybody who makes the argument that they don't use education is kind of off course. I mean, large businesses owners will not make that argument because they know they need educated people. Education is a huge resource to them. And I think you do them a disservice to say that businesses don't like to pay for education. I think that's a true thing. Now, the other thing, Kathy, you brought up was, and you last time in 2019 when I was here, you brought up the thing that we're not Boston, right? Now I'm a manufacturing engineer by background, and I know that argument. When you present data and people don't like the data because something is wrong, they will immediately try to throw out some data. Right? And that's okay. If you want to throw out part of the data, you have to go on the other side of the distribution and throw out the other part. Right? Or you're just influencing the population. And if you spend time and look at the actual data, you can get it from the Department of Resources. If you do that, because Boston and Cambridge and some of the others, the big ones, you throw them out, you throw out the ones on the other side, and all your single rate towns go away. So what's your population? It's all split rate. It's all split rate towns. We're comparing, and we're in that population. I mean, we rank right in there with all the other split rate towns. We are just like that, right? And then, not to go on and on, the basic argument for this, for a split rate, is that businesses' taxes are a cost to businesses. In Southborough, I don't know if you saw that little article I wrote up on my Southborough, where I say, you know, our residential tax rate is higher than what's paid on 88% of the property in Massachusetts, while our commercial tax rate is lower than 70% of what the commercial property in the state is paying. So they're getting a good deal. There's no doubt about it. They're getting a very good deal, but our residents are paying higher than what they should have to pay for the town, for taxes, in order to subsidize that. So they're subsidizing the businesses here. I mean, people think we're not giving services. We're not that different from any place else. I mean, people bring up sewer. I mean, sewer, if you're gonna have sewerage, the people who use it pay for it, right? They have to pay for sewerage. So say they don't have sewerage, and plus most of the places that have sewerage have split rates. Right? That's seems to go hand in hand. You know? My last point is, well, I can't think of it at the moment, but anyways, I think those are enough, right? I think really Southborough should be a split rate town. Oh yeah, the last point is I offer what I call the Andover challenge. Andover is demographically just like us. Average cost of a home, tax rate's about the same if they had a single tax rate. The percentage of their basis is about the same as ours. They're very much like us. They're the closest I can find a match to us. They're a split rate town. Right? It's saving the average owner there probably between $1,000 and $2,000 a year because of their split rate town. Now the challenge is, and anybody wants to take it, I can put the data together. We'll go to Andover. Andover has a nice commercial. If you've ever been to Andover, there's a nice commercial downtown, a lot of people walking around. We'll catch people on the street and we'll ask them, would you be willing to go to a single rate to subsidize the businesses in Andover? You probably want to wear your helmet, right? Because I'm sure they'll tell you you're crazy, right? So I think there's good precedence here for Southborough. We're kind of out of the loop on this. Right? Now there are others that are worse, no doubt about it, right? But we are kind of out of the loop, and it is costing the taxpayers of Southborough. In addition, I figured about additional $1,000 a year because we have not kept up with what's been going on in the state. So that's all I have to say. Appreciate your time, and hope to see you again.
So thank you very much, as
Yeah.
always. Truly appreciate it. It's a really good debate to have,
Yep.
and I appreciate everything you do to bring the facts forward. But back to your Andover question. If you ask the question the way you ask it, of course you're going to say no.
Yeah.
So anyways, the way you ask the question sometimes too.
Okay,
right?
so how should we
That
ask the
did sound like
question?
a very,
So how would you like to ask the question?
What? I have a little more facts and not say, do you want to subsidize businesses?
Okay, if you don't want to say subsidized businesses, would you just ask them, would you want to go, without the business thing, would you want to go to a,
Who wants to
Single
increase any cost, right, that they pay? So, you know, the answer is almost always no.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
truly, thank you very much. Anybody have
Okay.
questions for
Any
Carl
other-
before he leaves?
Good to see
So
you
we can talk
guys.
about this a long
Nice to
time,
see you.
but
What's that?
We could talk about this a long time, but we're already in our meetings.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But do we need to close the hearing and take a vote?
Any other public comment on this issue? Come on up.
Patricia Fiore, 10 Winter Street, Southborough. I hope you don't mind if I read from my notes that I just took as I was sitting over there. I'd like to have some discussion regarding the residential and possibly small commercial exemption. Those in this town with property under an average value of $803,000 are most likely seniors or lower income earners. And I think that we should give them a bit of a break. I just looked up on the computer and it appears that 18% of all Massachusetts residents in the Commonwealth qualify under that provision for residential exemptions. And it is in effect in 14 communities, including Barnstable, Boston, Brookline, Cambridge, Chelsea, Everett, Malden, Somerville, Waltham, Tisbury, and Watertown. I think those of us that own more expensive houses or choose to build more expensive houses should shoulder more of the burden. So I'd like some discussion on that.
Can you come back up?
First of all, it's public comment, so I don't know how long you want to go in with this. I'll say this, it's the residential exemption, again, 14 towns, there's 351 communities. Okay, not very popular. Again, as I told you, it's really in areas of rental and seasonal. Again, what you're doing is you're shifting burden. Okay, you're shifting it off of the lower end to the higher end. Now, there's comments that are made, well, most of the senior citizens are in a lower end house. You'd have to quantify that by breaking down data to really determine that. There's a lot of well-off seniors, that live in smaller houses because they choose to. So I think you need further information on that. I will say this though, there is something interesting. 4 or 5 towns, might be 6 now. There is a home rule that people are doing and I believe it's a shift within the residential. It's tied to the circuit breaker, okay? Towns right now have to go home rule, go through the state legislature, come back, you bounce back and forth for a couple of years, you finally get it approved, and then it's only good for 3 years, and you go back to the legislature. There was legislation put forth this past year. I think the assessors organization was trying to take these home rules, make it one, tie it to the circuit breaker that we have. That way it really targets to the people that really need it. Unfortunately, the legislature got a hold of it and kind of messed with the bill. And the assessors ended up not even supporting it. We're hoping to see that get rewritten and come back. I think that would be an interesting thing to watch. And what they were trying to do is come up with it and make it, instead of going the home rule thing, make it a local option. That's something I think we really want to watch. I think could be intriguing to help out the seniors. Again, because it's tied to the circuit breaker, the people who really need it would get it, not a lot of people who don't need it. I'm not a firm believer of, I just turned an age, so I should automatically get something. Not a firm believer. I don't think other people should have to pay for that if those people have needs. So it's something we got to watch. We'll know. It's obviously comes through the organization, but that is a potential of something that I think is coming down, and I think it's going to come down fairly soon if it gets back in the next legislative session.
And we do have other mechanisms to help seniors out with tax bills already that exist today. So there are.
We do. There's exemptions. Don't forget, and you can also, with all this great equity being added to your house with rising values, you can defer your taxes at a mere 2%.
And there's senior tax bill for too. Okay, so thank you very much.
Can you just ask a question, Mr. I don't think there was, what is the explanation for circuit breaker?
The circuit breaker, that's a state income tax.
It's credit on your Massachusetts income tax
Yep.
for utilities. If your utilities and real estate taxes are more than a % of your income, you get a credit against your Mass state income tax.
So it ties to very similar type things, so it makes it easy. Some of these other towns, they adopted home rule. It's a very convoluted type thing, but a couple did try to tie it right to that, and it seems to be the best and fairest way. So that's something that definitely, hopefully it's coming down the road.
Okay, Sam.
Interesting comment, Ms. Fiore. I talk to a lot of people, and taxes is a common topic. And I continue to be surprised at how many people come up to me and say, essentially, I'm house poor. I'm living in a fairly expensive house. I'm retired, Don't have the income that I used to, so I'm feeling a lot of pressure in terms of being able to pay my taxes at this point. So I think there is at least some amount of that out there. I don't have data on that, but I'd like to know a lot more about how much of that is there before we talk about this kind of shift. So if you, Ms. Fiore, have data on that, I'd be interested in seeing it, but I would need to see something like that before I'm prepared to support this. A little more than that, please. So, anyway, so I'm not prepared to move on this one other than what I've said previously.
Anybody else on this topic? Anybody?
Rob raised.
Mr. Anderson.
Hi.
No one answered.
Rob Anderson, 18 Atwood Road. In full disclosure, I am the chair of the Southborough EDC. I'm not speaking on the EDC's behalf, although we have sent in a letter supporting a single tax rate in the past. I'm speaking as a resident and someone who works in economic development throughout the state. I believe close to 70% of the state has a single tax rate. And I've always lived by the philosophy of how can you say your community is business friendly when you shift the burden off everyone to the businesses directly. I also believe in never miss the opportunity to shut the hell up and say things short. I support the single tax rate, and I think it should continue to stay that way here in Southborough. Thank you.
Okay, Carl, very quickly.
Okay, very quickly, just to update the EDC.
Up to the table, Carl, up here so we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Back again. I'll make this real quick. I know you get tired of listening to me. Just make sure that the EDC understands that the number he used is 70%. Well, it went down a little bit, but it's essentially 70% are single tax rate and 30% are split rate. The 30% that are split rate have 80% of all the commercial and industrial property in the state. The 70%, the EDC says is business friendly, they've got 20%. I mean, that's a disaster if you think that's the strategy.
Yeah.
That's an absolute disaster. They're not dragging business out of split rate towns, and it's been that way for years. Matter of fact, it's going more the other way. Right? So that's all I have to say. So that comment that the single rate is a big draw to business doesn't seem to be working. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Kathy, can I just ask a quick clarity? Sorry. Paul and Lori, can I just ask you a quick question on the tax rates of surrounding towns?
Yep.
Hopkinton, is that correct? That what I have is Hopkinton's a penny less than residential?
Yeah, it says.
Exactly what they have a means tested senior exemption.
Okay.
As far as means tested, I haven't delved into it, but it is one of those type, I believe, rule type things.
Okay.
Anytime you do a residential exemption, it will change the residential rate higher than the commercial and industrial on the split rate. The same thing on the commercial and industrial, if you adopt the exemption there, it will also raise the rate relative to the split rate town.
Okay, I just wanted clarity. That's all. Thank you. I should ask that earlier.
Okay, so can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? So public hearing for the tax classification has been closed. Okay, now we've got 3 motions to make and vote on. Okay, so I'm gonna do them one at a time to make sure it's clear. Okay, so the first motion I'm going to make is to continue with a single tax rate for fiscal year 23.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 5-0 to continue with our $14.76 tax rate. The second motion is to not adopt the residential exemption that we just discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Third motion is to not adopt the small commercial exemption.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Jelly. Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. Well, You're just gonna say thank you? Oh, absolutely, say that all day long. Okay, I'll tell you really just gonna say thank you.
Quick, thank you.
Just real brief, Chris Robbins, 39 Parkerville Road. I think of all the hard work you do on this tax rate during this COVID crisis and the stress you've had to deal with, all this hard work and presenting an incredible presentation. He has a pulse in the greater community and what they are doing, and to bring that perspective in the midst of the crisis we've all gone through. From Mark to Vanessa to all of you, and Paul and Frank, big applause. This is big time stuff, and we've come through on the other side, and we've got a positive foot forward. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for thinking Paul, and thank you for thinking us. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, Mr. Shiner, come on up. I'm sorry. Mr. Shiner, sorry, I got one more hearing. We've got it. Okay, so is there anyone here from National Grid or Verizon? Anybody comments? No, I don't. Is that? So can someone raise their hand if they're here from either Verizon or National Grid for this hearing? Well, we know it's not. There's only companies that are here. So Vanessa, is anything you know that we don't know?
No, I'm just gonna check my email.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and postpone this unless someone shows up in the next few minutes. Okay. Vanessa, will you watch? Yeah. Okay. You said 7 o'clock. It's.
No, his last name is
What is it?
Galvin. This is last name.
Galvin.
There's no Gavin up there. Okay, all right, let's speak for Monica. So now, so Mr. Sean actually was right for the wrong reason. So will you formally introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, everyone. My name is Tony Schoner. I live at 28 Constitution Drive. I am the chair of the Southborough Golf Committee. I will give you a very brief update about the committee and the activities at the golf course. Thank you, Vanessa. Next slide, please. The golf committee, as you
Sorry.
probably know.
Sorry, to interrupt you. Vanessa, can you make sure you're sharing? Okay, just want to make sure for the public, sorry.
All right. The golf committee was essentially reconstituted in the middle of this year. There had been a committee, many members dropped off. We have 4 new members right now. It's not 5, my mistake on the slide here. Ira has carried over from the previous committee. I'm serving as the chair. We started meeting again in June. We meet every 2 or 3 weeks. Next slide, please. So I think, as you're aware, the Southborough Golf Club is really a unique asset in Southborough. It's situated in the middle of town. It preserves a substantial amount of open space. It's really a lovely golf course. It's been open for over 100 years. It's a unique golf course. It really serves golfers of a variety of abilities. It's really just a unique asset in town. It's just a wonderful place for people to get outside and have some fun with their friends on playing some golf. It's near the elementary school. It's near the senior center. It's near the public safety building. It's off of Route 85. It's really just ideally situated for everyone in town to get to it. So it's really just a wonderful asset. The number of rounds played has grown a lot over the last 5 years, up over double, which is just amazing. And I think that reflects the work that previous groups here in town have put into the golf course, and COVID, right, drove more people outside to play more golf. Golf in general is experiencing a lot of growth these days, and it's just great that there's a golf course like this in town. Next slide, please. This shows how rounds have grown, and you can see it's grown just a lot over the last 5 years. And that then gets reflected in the money that is coming into Southborough. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, previous slide. That one, yes. So as you're aware, there's a company that runs the course on Southborough's behalf, and their revenues are up also dramatically. As I think you're aware, a portion of those revenues come back to Southborough, to the golf revolving fund. It's kind of like a graduated scale of the percentage of funds that come back to the revolving fund. And those funds have been growing pretty significantly also. I asked Mark Purple yesterday, what's the status of that account? So there's $118,000 in the revolving account as of today. Last year, $56,000 came into the revolving account. This year, I would estimate that over $60,000 will come into the revolving account. You know, that's a reasonable amount of money that can be used to reinvest in the golf course and make some improvements that are needed. Next slide, please. So what have we been doing over the last few months? So neighbors raised concerns about golf balls leaving the course. And so we've spent a fair amount of time talking about golf balls that leave the course. You guys, I think, have talked about golf balls that leave the course. I know there's, there would be more discussion about what should be done about golf balls that leave the course. We've spent some time talking about how can we reduce the number of golf balls that leave the course. And so we've settled initially on a project that you guys approved last time, which is to essentially move 2 tee boxes, the 2 tee boxes that are nearest Ladiscona, holes 6 and 7, and just change their angles so that a golfer will more naturally aim away from the road. We'll see if this helps. I suspect it will. Again, the goal is to just reduce the number of golf balls that leave the course. We've undertaken an effort to come up with some new signs to put around the course, make it easier for people to find their way around, understand where they are, how far they should hit the ball, just to make it a more pleasant experience. The parking lot should really be paved. I think you guys have talked about this before. I know Karen Galligan has participated in some discussions about this. It's a gravel parking lot right now. You really can't fit as many cars in there as you'd like to if it was paved and lined. Frankly, it's not a very nice experience for older people, or it's completely not handicap accessible. It's very difficult to walk across gravel if you have any sort of disabilities. And so the parking lot should be paved. And so that, I think, is a nearer term activity. You guys will have to think about how does that get funded. But that's something that our committee will continue to come back to you to talk about, paving the parking lot, paving it, making it safer, making it handicap accessible, and allowing it to support more cars. Longer term, we'll continue to monitor neighbor concerns. A lot of people live around the course, so we'll continue to pay attention to them. There's some other course improvements that should be pursued, specifically irrigation. The course has a very old irrigation system. It's difficult to use, it leaks, it's manual, it doesn't cover the areas it should cover. So the irrigation system should be replaced. Previous golf committee identified this. I think everyone knows that the irrigation system should be replaced. Our committee is going to dig into this some more, see if we can come up with some proposals about what should be covered and what it might actually cost. And we'll come back and we'll talk to you guys about that. So hopefully, I don't know, early next year, we'll be back talking to you about the irrigation options. There are other hole-by-hole enhancements we should consider. Those, I think, will be less expensive than the irrigation system, but we'll keep you posted on that. We think we should try to increase just the usage of the course. There are 3 leagues that play there today. Maybe there's an opportunity for some more leagues, opportunity for better golf lessons, improve the food options at the clubhouse, maybe do some more marketing, just attract townspeople and people from out of the town to the course. And we also think that we haven't started this process yet, but there should be some options for off-season use of that land. Other towns that have golf courses have cross-country skiing. And so it seems like that would be something that Southborough could do, something like that, some off-season, other uses of this wonderful property in the middle of town. Next slide, please. So in closing, I think we know it's just a wonderful asset in the middle of town, preserves all sorts of space, a great place for people to go and do things outside. It's generating significant revenue that we can put back into the facility. Thank you for your support. We'll be asking for your continued support in the future, and hopefully you'll come out and play golf.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for me?
I'm going to start on my end. So it's great that this committee has been reinvigorated. So I'd love to see that for sure. I know Sam comes to a lot of meetings. I want to come to them too, because I love golf and I love what you guys are doing. So I think you understated the revenue this year. I think it's going to be 76 if the last 2 months are equal to last year. So it is good. So, you know, that's great news. I don't think the irrigation system is on the capital plan yet, correct?
It's been discussed with capital. I'd have to take a look and see if it's actually on the plan yet.
Okay, so.
I don't think it is.
But what about the paving? We've been talking about that for a long time, and
I think there's been talk.
Yeah, we've been discussing, in fact, Mr. Shorter and I were having another discussion about it previously. Talked about it with Ms. Galligan, have talked about it briefly with Mr. Valentine. You know, the revenues really have only increased in the past 2 years. You know, if you look at I believe it was $39,000 in total revenue 2 years ago. And so we've seen leaps and bounds with the course, and I'd like to assume that we're going to maintain this level of play, maintain this level of revenue, and with the agreement that we have with New England Golf, continue down this road. So it would make sense for us to look at paving the golf road and the parking lot, which we do have agreement from the Conservation Commission at this point to do. From a stormwater management perspective, and try to look at a short-term bond that can be paid for out of the revenues that we're getting in from golf, so that it doesn't have an impact on the tax rate. Again, we're putting that money back into the course. Just to jump to the other subject, which is irrigation. This is something that I've had some preliminary conversations with CPC, just trying to get an understanding of where they may fall on this. I don't think there's really been any, we've not reached any understanding about that yet. I do think the work of the golf committee, and now as you say, now you're reinvigorated. You know, my view of golf committee is to be that advocate, you know, and be the group in between golf management and the town, and try to help to facilitate those things coming forward. So I wholeheartedly welcome to help with a little bit of a push when we come to talk about the funding pieces of irrigation, because I think this is something that may make sense for CPC to consider.
So my last question is moving the tee boxes on 6 and 7. So the money's been approved. Where does that stand? What do you think the time frame is for doing that?
Thank you. I'm gonna go sit next to him.
He's a new member of the committee.
Yeah, I know, and again, we had this conversation before today as well. The golf cart architect is engaged, and we're looking to schedule a Zoom to get some questions answered. Hopefully that's going to happen next week. Plans will be finalized probably sometime, I think, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll get this out to bid. If you're doing some quick math in your head, by the time this is awarded, it could be very end of November, beginning of December. And then, you know, what sense does it make to award it now to get on someone's calendar? Or is there an ability for the contractor to come in and do something during the winter, you know, weather dependent? I think the goal is to try to have something in place, improvements in place that we can put into play early into the 2023 season. And I think, and give credit to the committee and management company and the architect. I don't think anybody wants to put up a fence or put up a netting. You've got a lot of, especially along 7, you've got a lot of those big old trees that look like they're going to grab anything that would curve out. But golfers are tenacious in their hooks and slices. And, you know, I think that doing this and realigning, you know, where people are aiming is going to help to keep more balls on the course. There is no perfect solution, but we're trying to find something that is going to reduce the liability, try to see if this makes it better, and then maybe we can build on that. So that's that's where we are with it.
And I've got one more question. Does the committee have a recommendation as to what you believe should be done when there is, let's just stipulate that the belief is the town doesn't have a liability when it gets broken, whatever. So let's just stipulate that. But do you have a recommendation as to what you think we should do if there's a window broken? If there's something that a golf ball hurts on lettuce farm?
So we haven't specifically come to an opinion on that. If you'd like us to come to an opinion, we could, but we haven't, caucused and voted and said, hey, this is what we think the town should do.
I'm not sure. I'm asking. I just wanted to see if you've discussed it and see.
Well, we've talked about it, right? And it's clearly a very complicated topic. So we thought, well, let's just try to keep more balls on the course for now. And so that's what we thought we'd work on. And I don't know if our opinion, I don't know how important our opinion would actually be. It's just a really complicated legal topic.
Chelsea?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schoner, and to your committee. I do have one question. Have you gotten any public feedback on the realignment of the tee boxes, either positive or negative?
The only feedback, I guess I'd say, we have frequent committee meetings. Sometimes the public attends and no one has said, oh, that sounds like a bad idea.
Okay.
So, it's a pretty modest change, right? We're not making a dramatic change, but it clearly will, to a degree, change the angle of your first shot on those two holes. So I don't think anyone's going to object to this.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for your presentation. I will say I have heard from one resident that had concern regarding the placement of the tee boxes only because it's a historic golf course and, along those lines. So
Okay.
I recommended that they come and speak to the golf committee. So I'm just putting it out there because, again, there has been. I think paving is definitely the driver of priority. We talk about utilizing it. When it went to town meeting, it was about cross country and, the things you talked about. So I think paving the driveway makes it an all season, not course, but facility to be able to use,
Yep.
For skiing, sledding. It just opens up an opportunity. So I think that's great. And that's something that I would certainly advocate, for doing for just that reason. For families being able to get out, and not having to park along lettuce farm or a side street or whatever to be able to go sledding. So, thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Schoner. Very interesting presentation. And as folks have said, I've attended a number of the golf committee meetings, and I'm excited about the energy I see there and the cooperation between the committee and the management company and the course staff. I think everybody is pushing hard to produce a better product for more people, and I think that's great for all parties involved. And I recall when we did the original committee in the pre-construction phase for the public safety building, we had some consultants in to talk with that committee. And one of the questions was, what do we think the upside is in terms of number of rounds for the course? Is there a ceiling there? And we had several estimates that indicated at that time, at least, that we are still not, with the current great success that we've had, there's still some more headroom here. If we schedule actively and maybe get some more leagues playing and so forth. So I think we haven't reached the potential yet in terms of the kind of things that you're talking about for marketing and course improvements. And clearly anything we can do to enhance the play experience is great. I've heard conversation around getting more families involved, and I've heard anecdotal stories about folks bringing their families out, possibly irritating the golfers behind them some, but I think you've got to balance that out and generate, again, a strong community support base. So I think very bright future, and I encourage you to keep pushing, and I'm grateful for the support that the new committee is providing and all others involved in the process. So thank you.
Andrew?
Thank you. I don't have much to say that's not already been said, but I would just comment that I like this type of presentation where you come in and just give a summary of what ideas you have and thinking ahead. So, your ask is, it's not really a very specific other than that it sets the stage for now. I'm kind of prepared in a couple months back and definitely very interested about, getting specific about the irrigation issue. I think it may be very expensive, but I'd just like to see what the numbers are like. And then we can maybe think about ways to make some things happen.
This was refreshing, so thank you.
Recognize we have another member of the committee here, Mr. Davis is
Yeah.
observing
Hi,
and
Mr. Davis.
ready to jump in
And
and
also.
rescue Tony if necessary.
Okay, come on up. So thank you.
We also have management company represented back here, so thank you.
Yeah, long-time resident.
Joanne Pearson, 101 Main Street. So I have a question. What is the percentage of residents in town that actually golf? For the numbers, has anybody done a study before, we're giving every taxpayer is paying to potentially pay the parking lot and improve the golf course? So
Well,
how many people in town?
Things talking about coming out of a revolving.
Well, whatever, that revolving fund is created by our tax dollars, right?
No.
Well, it's paid for by
It's paid by the
rounds,
fees,
paying for
so-
rounds.
The
Golf
management
fees.
company collects the fees and we get 12% of the first $550,000 and we get 20% of anything above the 5 fees. So the money in that account is not from your tax levy at all.
So
It's
the
straight from
payment
the
is a
fees
part-
that are being paid to claim the golf course.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So that's how we would pay for the golf course?
That's how we pay for the golf course.
Pay for
Yes,
sorry.
that's the plan, is to use that fund to pay for the golf course. Mr. Purple's idea was if we don't have enough money in it to pay for everything up front, we could issue a bond with the revenues from that fund to basically pay the debt service on that bond. So again, not using your tax levy at all to pay for anything on the golf course. That's the intention.
Okay, so this is just to inform the board what the plans are in
Yes.
the future. Another question I have is, with the surface to plow it in the winter, to be able, people can use it to cross-country ski or snowshoe. This past winter, I snowshoed on some of the trails that we have along the reservoir, and I just park on the side of the road and I walk across the street and I strap my snowshoes on. I don't need anything majorly formal about it. Is there another surface other than asphalt, which is very expensive now, that could be, if the biggest, or part of the big consideration is being able to plow it in the winter so that families can come and cross-country ski and sled? I do see a lot of people, not a lot, but I see people, sledding, kids sledding. Is there another surface that's been researched, or maybe a different area that can just be, not this a full-blown thing, but so that it could be plowed, people can access, because they just need to access from the outside. They don't need to go to a clubhouse or way in, I would think, because they just need an area that could be plowed. And then they strap on their skis or whatever.
I'm not aware, I don't know if you guys are, of any other alternatives been proposed. It's been straight blacktop or asphalt, as far as I know. And Ms. Galligan's here tonight, so she's listening to this. Have you thought, Karen, of any other alternative besides just normal asphalt as far as the parking lot of the?
I haven't thought of anything else.
Kathy? But I think Mr. Schoen has raised a related issue here. The reason we're paving is not solely for winter access.
Yeah.
There is a parking capacity issue that's important for the use ongoing in the course. There is the dust that comes off of the current surface that floats across the public safety vehicles there that requires more vehicle washing than otherwise might be ideal. And then there's the accessibility piece. If you're mobility disabled, walking across that gravel and there are some sizable stones in there, if you walk through there, is a challenge, or could be a challenge, certainly. So I think it's a safety issue as well. So for all those reasons, it seems like, to me at least, that asphalt is the way to go. There are other surfaces that you can drive across, but my experience is, and Ms. Gallagher knows better than I, that they tend to be more expensive. You can put in cobblestones with grass in between or whatever that, again, has a nice look to it. St. Mark's actually has some of that on their campus near the crosswalk on Route 85 up there that they put in for vehicle parking. That I think is a lot more expensive to do, but it serves the same purpose basically. So.
And just my first question, what is, out of curiosity, what is the percentage of residents that use it?
I think that's a very interesting question. So I'll see if I can try to answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So, Sid, come on up. Introduce yourself, even though we all know.
Yeah, I will do that. How you doing?
He's only been here 80 years or whatever. New guy in town.
Okay, I'm Dick Cruciani. I'm at 4 Ted Lane, Southborough, and I'm also an employee at the golf course. And, full disclosure, as they say. I want to thank the golf committee for the efforts they're making. Also, Sam is always keeping his hand in there, and I think that's terrific. This is something that I hadn't thought of, but actually came up at your meeting. That our front sign that hangs down low under the DPW sign, the plantings are now overtaking it. And it's very hard, it's going to rise up. We're not going to be able to see it. It keeps going. And this was brought up at the meeting. And I see Karen is here, and I know the Board of Selectmen is here. And I was wondering if, somewhere in the future, we could, put some lower plantings or whatever. We've had comment even from people. It's hard to find, where the
I'm
golf.
sure we can do something to make sure that sign
Okay.
needs to be seen, one way or the other.
Yeah.
All right. And I appreciate all the efforts that are going into to make us go forward.
We appreciate you and your smile.
And New England Golf also appreciates it. All right, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Davis, thank you, Mr. Allen. All right. Okay, Chair's report. So as we all know, Select Board had a meeting. We established 28 goals for fiscal year 23. We assigned those to various Select Board members. Some have one, some have two. So Sam and I were assigned to what I'm just calling the IT goal. So we had what I consider our first kickoff meeting this week with Mark, with Jay, with Matt Probst of NPC and Angela Varner. And I think it was a good start. The purpose of the meeting specifically was to start talking about their specific recommendations that they're going to make to use ARPA money that the ARPA committee has set aside for two things. One is to upgrade the website, and then also to upgrade the Wi-Fi in town in various buildings. So that's kind of two buckets that were identified, put into the recommendations by ARPA. We've got it on our list as potential. So they are making progress with each. With the website, they have decided that they'd like to go with the vendor that we have now. The vendor we have now was acquired recently by a bigger company. That company has a better product. It's more sophisticated than we have. So basically upgraded what we have. So they have identified a female who I think is a student someplace that has agreed, that wants to do some work to get some credit, where she's going to survey the town, departments, et cetera, as far as what they want to see on the website. And that's going to be their input. So they're going to do that first. The hope is that they will end up with a contract signed by the end of the year, where this is going to go forward. So the survey will get done, they'll come back, decide, and then bring forward the request for funding. It looks like the funding would be $40-something thousand. They've got 80 as far as what's been set aside there. So there's more than what's probably needed to do it. If this particular website software is one adopted, the annual cost is about $7,000 going forward. Sam, correct me if I say something wrong here.
That's right.
All right, so that was the first topic we discussed, so more to come on that one, but that's just kind of a general where we are with that piece of it. The other piece is upgrading Wi-Fi, and Jay specifically has a lot of experience in that. He came from a place called North Hill Needham where he did the exact same thing. So again, the first step is to get an independent analysis of what we need. Don't ask the vendors to do it, because they're going to be biased. To get somebody independent to come in and say, this is what you need, and then put it out to bid as far as implementation goes. So that's coming too. We're going to see that one probably on November 1st as far as the first piece of that. They're going to want, I think, $10,000 to get that piece done as far as the survey to understand what we need. So we know what to go ask for when we get to bid. Okay, so that's the first small piece of that. Okay. All right. Okay, so second thing is for everybody listening tonight, we have a new police chief officially. He was sworn in at the special town meeting, right before the special town meeting, 6 o'clock. His wife is there, so it's very nice. So he is in his job. The pinning ceremony is going to be on October 23rd at 4 o'clock at the Senior Center. John Rooney is going to MC it, so the public is invited to that for those that can come. So that's the next step. But he's on the job at this point, so it's a done deal. Of course, the next step will then be to replace him as lieutenant. So that will start soon, I assume. Okay. All right. So Sunday, I've never been to an Eagle Scout ceremony, so I got to go to my first one. So I just wanted to mention that when it was a young man named Jack Tomany, who was in my neighborhood. It was at St. Matthew's Church, which was perfect because that's where he'd done his project. He actually built a serenity space for people for during COVID. It's a place to go and be peaceful, et cetera. So it was very impressive. So I was very glad to go and be able to talk because not only on Southborough, but because he was my neighbor. So good. And I was, Matt Probst was there from MTC, which was surprising. He's got 3 sons. He's a Eagle Scout. They had all the Eagle Scouts stand up, which I didn't know they did, you know, no matter who they were. So he stood up and I didn't know that. Then he's got 3 sons that are Eagle Scouts and a 4th one that was there too that's about to be one. So he's full of people. So you just never know all the committee members, all the background. So I truly enjoyed that. All right, members report. I'm not sure who's doing this one. Office hours update.
I'll start and then if Andrew wants to chime in. So we had a great office hours a week or so ago. We had 4 participants, which was wonderful. You know, we ranged from topics of ADA. One of the things that was most impressive for me is we had a young man, he's a senior in high school. He wants the board in the future date to potentially consider like a student or youth governance.
It's like a youth advisory.
Yeah. a youth
Some other
advisory.
towns have done this.
Yeah.
A committee or a person?
Committee, just to have the youth be able to participate in town government and to kind of be able to give their thoughts, obviously in an advisory nature. Very impressive young man. I think as he gets further along and he's going to share some information with Andrew and I, you know, to guide him to coming to the board. Very impressive. He actually sat on the Tomahawk
Naming thing.
right at Algonquin as well. So he's a senior. Again, very impressive. Let's see what else. We talked a little bit about just regional dispatch.
Regional dispatch.
ADA concern on Main Street.
What's the concern on Main Street?
With the sloping currently of the crosswalks going down and what they thought was some mismatch. I know Ms. Galligan's had a great response back. So I think for now, we're okay on that because, you know, again, there's future work to be done that the final paving isn't done either, which is going to raise everything. So there was just some concern on that. And what was the point? What did I miss? Oh,
3.
Ms. McKee.
Yes, which was a follow-up to the issue about the legalities of I'm thinking of the right word because I'm realizing she was really stressing it was not a raffle, it was not a
Right.
sell
The
of anything, it wasn't a
Donation,
Yeah.
yes.
So
the
Fundraising.
private organizations donated gift cards, etc. And you would be entered into a raffle.
not a raffle.
It's hard to not use that word.
Not a raffle.
But you
She's
sign
saying
up
that.
and you provide your email. And then in exchange for just providing your email to get on a list for the Trails Committee, in exchange for that, you are eligible for this drawing. Maybe that's a better word, drawing. And she pointed out that it was successful in really increasing. They got a lot of email addresses,
Yeah,
and
I've
then
said over 50.
that helps them spread the word about their events.
And I would just, again, share for the public that's watching, you know, these office hours are a great opportunity. It's very low key. It's an opportunity to, you have access, to the selectmen. And again, I would encourage anyone as the future office hours come as well to please feel free to stop in and participate. It's a good opportunity to hear what your neighbors think as well.
I also found it interesting because I think this is maybe my second or third time doing it, but before sometimes we're doing it by Zoom and nobody comes. And this, by doing it in person, it actually seemed to have more better turnout doing it in person rather than Zoom.
Now you guys are making me and Chelsea feel bad. We did it, nobody showed up, so.
We just hit the right
You
night.
warmed them up.
We had
We hit the
one.
right night.
Well, we
There was a
cooled
line of
them
people
off.
to actually talk to us. It
Yeah,
was strange.
at one point it was kind of nice, but, so anyway, that's the update on office hours. If I can add one other item, I just wanted to share that the board this morning had the opportunity to recognize all of the employees within the town with a wonderful breakfast. We had a great turnout. There was over 50 employees that came to come to be able to actually interact with the selectmen on kind of a different, more casual level, and know how much that we appreciate everything that they do for us every day and the taxpayers every day. So just a quick update on that.
Great event, yeah. And Lisa, I'd expand on your youth advisory council thing. The Youth and Family Services actually has had a youth advisory council in the past. And I think that sort of stopped with COVID a couple of years ago, but they found that very successful, I believe. And I've not heard recently about plans to revive that, but that was a great way to get input from the group that they provide a lot of support for.
Yeah, and he specifically mentioned, Sam, like conservation issues and, issues along that. It's just, they want to be able to have the opportunity to have a voice in all facets basically of government, which is pretty commendable. That's pretty wonderful.
Chelsea
at a
made
young
the
age.
pitch at St. Mark's, right?
I did.
Class.
It was awesome.
They came and visited.
Yeah.
It was
So,
probably one of my highlights of being on the board was participating. In it. It was great.
Wait a minute, better than the meetings? Come
Yeah.
on, John, geez.
Yeah.
but again, it's a bigger discussion for the future, but again, it was a pretty commendable moment and
So maybe we can invite this gentleman in for a future meeting.
yeah, absolutely. When he's ready, he's putting some stuff together and anyway, just a great opportunity. So,
All right, so let's keep that in mind, make sure that we do that. Okay, Mr. Purple.
I have three quick things. There's nothing on the agenda, but they're all feel good things. So,
All right. Do that.
I did want to just pile on a little bit to what Ms. Braccio said and just thank the board for doing events like this morning. There was a great turnout. It gives a chance for the employees to get together. There's food. That's always attractive. But it's very good. So I appreciate you doing that. I do want to also recognize Ms. Hale for her help and
sorry, Vanessa. I should have done that.
just trying to, help to coordinate everything. So it is nice. It is well received. Did see a couple of emails. They went back and forth thanking, for this morning, and that it does mean a lot. So appreciate it. Second item, I sent the board something out, but I did want to publicly do this. And now that I'm doing it, I guess I really should have tried to hijack the end of the golf subject. But as you're aware, over the Columbus Day weekend, we had the now fourth annual fundraiser for ALS 1 in memory of former selectman Brian Schifrin and our veterans agent moderator, John Wilson. Bill Harrison, president of Inland Golf, had reached out. They sent a check off to ALS 1 in the amount of $3,800 this year. They saw a little bit lower rounds for whatever reason. The weather was pretty good, but things were a little bit down this year. Last year was just over $5,000. We had a very nice email back from Jen DiMartino from ALS 1, very appreciative of the donation. And I think the one thing in her email that really struck home to doing this, that people may think we're just doing this, we're cutting a check in that. She happened to see Christine Schifrin at an event, and Christine had mentioned to her that it really meant a lot that we're still doing this, and still recognizing, Brian and, and John in that fashion. I also want to thank Brian Shea, who has continued to be the conduit to work between ALS 1 and the golf course. Wanted to thank John and his staff and Dick and, for everything they do to help, to make this, a good weekend. So kudos to everybody for continuing in that vein. Finally, last week, the Worcester District Attorney's Office presented a team award to area first responders, which included our District 14 Tech Rescue Team for a wide area search on July 17th in the town of Hopkinton. There was a missing person. It's ultimately located in the woods in Milford, had been there for about 24 hours. Our own Southborough Fire Lieutenant and member of the Tech Rescue Team, Ken Franks, was recognized as part of that. And I just wanted to publicly, thank him for, recognizing for that award and thank him for participation. In that it's nice to see the value in some of these regional organizations that our employees do participate in. That's all I have.
Good news. That is all good things, I agree. Okay, consent agenda. So we have got A through F. Okay, so anybody want to hold A, B, C,
Yes.
D, E,
Yes.
F? Okay, so we're gonna hold C and E, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and approve the ones we didn't hold, and then we'll go back to C and E. So do I have a motion to approve on the consent agenda A, B, D, and F?
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, so there's opposed. Okay, so C, is that you, Chelsea?
That's me. Yeah. So I had a chance to read Ms. Gallagher's request for the DPW employee promotion. And my concern was making the promotion retroactive to 7/1. About the precedent that sets for mid-year promotions. I did read through the DPW union contract, and it is within the select board's purview for promotions mid-year. There's no stipulation on that. So it is allowed. There's nothing about retroactive in there. I just think from a process perspective, I think it sends a bad message.
But we could do it if we chose to do it.
I don't see that you can't.
You agree?
I don't believe there's a prohibition, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you just don't like the retroactivity of it.
I don't. No, and it's not because the employee, I mean, I think there's a compelling reason to, and good documentation of promoting this employee to the position as outlined by Ms. Galligan. I just don't agree that it should be retroactive.
Lisa?
It's a valid concern, Chelsea. I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about that. I don't disagree of setting a precedent to doing these off-cycle per se. So I'd be interested in hearing what the rest of the board thinks, but I think it's a valid point.
Sam?
Yeah, again, I don't object to the retro. Presumably, it sounds like this gentleman has been doing the work since July 1st, so it seems to me not unreasonable to pay for it. I guess I'm totally fluid on precedent. I have no qualms at doing things, and if someone comes in and say you did it before, I'm saying I'm doing it on a case-by-case basis, so I make decisions without a lot of focus on precedent necessarily, so that doesn't carry a lot of weight with me personally. I agree, I understand others may, so I'm fine with the retro here.
Yeah, I also had questions about the request to have it retroactive. I just think I understand the point you're making. I just think it's a better practice to have the request come to the board more contemporaneous with when the promotion is about to happen. And also, I mean, generally for adjustments to people's pay rates effective July 1st, 2022, we would want to have that as part of a budget cycle, right? Because it aligns with the fiscal year. So, but I think that a good case has been made for the promotion and certainly supportive of it. But I would just, by doing this, we try to it kind of promotes getting the request in earlier rather than later, which I think puts us in a position to make a better decision.
So I've got a little bit different take on this. I actually think we should do this because I don't think he should be penalized because Ms. Galligan was doing what should have been done. She wrote the memo and says, I did not get around to this request until now. So she says it's on her that it did get done. So I don't think he should be penalized because this was done belatedly and not done timely.
I mean, I'm not gonna vote against this with the board. I think it's a valid, very valid point as we go forward.
To not do things retroactively. I agree, but it's not, I don't think it's his fault.
It's
So
not.
something should be penalized.
I agree with you. It's not I agree with you. It's not the employee's fault.
And I don't like the retroactive, believe me, I don't like the retroactive either, especially in a budget. It's a small amount, so, okay. But it's a principle matter, so I totally agree with that. But I still don't think he should be penalized. So, okay, it sounds like we've got,
3-2.
well, I don't think
I'm
so.
not gonna necessarily vote against it. I think that the concerns.
Yeah, I think we'll all
out
have
there.
sort of same concerns with this,
And-
we'll weigh in a little bit differently as far as what we should do here. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the retroactive promotion. Excuse me,
Let's put your hand up as well.
come on up.
Hello. Grant Barrington, the Flag Group. I was just wondering, I read the memo. Was there any reasoning why Ms. Galligan didn't do this on time? It just said, I didn't get around to it, but is there anything more than that?
I don't know any more than.
That's all we
what's in
had.
this memo.
Okay, I think it sets a bad precedent. Essentially, if you were to retroactively approve the request, you're pretty much tacitly saying that it's okay to have someone perform the job and retroactively expect that they'll be paid even if they didn't come to you first. So I think, it's could lead to problems down in the future. I think it's a problem to do it now. So I would request that you don't approve the retroactive payment. Thanks.
Hopefully there'll be a lesson learned on this one too. Okay, so
Another hand up.
anybody else? Someone's got a hand up?
Yeah.
Monty.
Yeah. Just a minute, we got one coming over from Zoom. Then we'll talk to you.
Hi, to the Board of Selectmen. This is Marnie Houlihan, 26 Clifford Road. How are you?
You're fine.
I wanted to actually, Mr. Farrington made a great comment, and it was one that I wanted to raise as well, is I think in most disciplines, there are performance management processes, timelines, and submission dates. I am in agreement that anybody who has supervisory capacity and it's within their obligations to write performance management reviews and submit for salary increases should be done in a process that is in sync with the town's process. So one, I would question why she just didn't get around to it. I don't think that's an appropriate response. I think that the board should ask why. I think there should be some accountability. Second, I do agree with Ms. Malinowski. I don't think retroactive is appropriate. The request was received. If you want to give an off-cycle promotion, that's certainly fine, but I would not make it retroactive. I do believe it sets a bad precedent for the town to continue, and this is maybe something for a personnel board. Thank you for allowing my comment.
Can I just make one comment back? As it relates to personnel board, this falls under us because it's a union contract. So any SAP employee would be under personnel board, Marnie, but because this is part of a union contract, it's to the select board.
Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Joanne Pearson, 101 Main Street. I feel like I should have a booster seat if that's like a chair. I just see the top of my head or something. I just wonder if it's possible so that it doesn't end up being a retroactive promotion. If there's a way to acknowledge the extra work by doing some sort of bonus instead, an extra bonus, and then the promotion comes in a timely way when it should have, rather than doing it retroactively, but to acknowledge and compensate for the additional work that this
person is doing. Or has been doing. I don't believe the contract allows.
There's
for
no,
that.
yeah, unfortunately, there's no provision for that in the agreement.
For, did they get a bonus?
No.
Oh.
What do you
It's a
think?
good comment, though, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish. Okay, any further comment? Okay, so I'll make the motion to approve the retroactive promotion of this gentleman to July 1st, 2022, per the terms outlined in Ms. Gallagher's memo.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All opposed? 3-2. Okay, so approved 3-2. So thank you, everybody. Okay, next one that we know is the payment management system, RP. Lisa?
Just, I had a question on this, that, you know, when Capital had discussed this, we talked about, we were kind of talking about, I think, a specific software, and part of that software was allowing for a sidewalk module that we could input information on sidewalks. So again, as we talk about priorities for sidewalks, this, you know, that could be incorporated. Is that incorporated in the bid that we're doing?
Partially, I was going to hold this one as well,
Okay.
because I've been involved in the bid assessment. The vendor that we selected, at least at this point, recommended at this point, actually is going to do a LiDAR approach, which is a laser assessment scan of the pavement that is not going to include assessing sidewalk condition. However, at the same time, they're going to include a GoPro camera video assessment of the condition, not assessment, but capturing the condition out there. So we will have video file that we can play, drive around town, and if we want to do a sidewalk assessment later, we can certainly do that. We have the data then to do that. But they're not going to actually do sidewalks as part of the drive-by, because it turns out it's difficult to do that by driving down the street. You got to look more closely at sidewalks, so that's more labor. But we will know or be able to determine internally, if we choose to figure out what sidewalks are where, and at least get a visual from 20 feet away or whatever of the condition of those sidewalks. So we can give us data that we haven't had previously.
So I'm concerned about that, Sam, because one of the big issues when sidewalks were discussed was, having a module or something that takes the prioritization out of an individual potentially. I think that's important. And I guess, I don't know, did any of these other modules, because I know that you were involved in all of this,
No.
did none of them encompass?
None of them get sidewalks. But Lisa, I think you're mixing up two things here. One, there's an assessment of pavement condition, which is we're going to get for the roadways. And the video will allow us to know whether sidewalks are there or not. But nobody, to my knowledge, has actually proposed that we do a new sidewalk plan. In other words, the real issue for sidewalks, I think, historically, starting with the assessment, the study that was done in 2015, is where we need additional sidewalks, probably more than how to repair the ones that we have, although the repair is certainly an important issue in a number of places. So if we want to do that, that's a bigger project, more money, et cetera. But I think this project gives us at least a foot in the door on the sidewalk piece.
But I think it gives us a little more than a foot in the door, simply because with the LiDAR, you do get an understanding of where you have sidewalks, where you have street signs, where you have fire hydrants. So we can use that data, as Sam has said, to create layers and additional layers where you're looking at sidewalks and everything. But I do agree that they don't suggest using AI in order to try to assess the conditions of sidewalks. That's a boots on the ground thing. That'll be an additional piece.
Just to clarify, Lisa's question was, none of the ones you looked at focus on sidewalks like they do.
There's not an opportunity.
It just doesn't exist.
Well, this particular bidder will do a sidewalk study, but they'll do it with boots on the ground, people walking around, which is moderately more expensive.
Okay, so our 26K is not going to pay for that.
That's
It's going to pay for the roads.
That's right. But, and they do the drive around in a couple of days with the car around town. So that's a very efficient process. And they use software to analyze the condition. So sidewalks, they say, I've talked to several people who said sidewalks are a visual inspection kind of thing, because it's really hard to get to the video into the assessment piece for the sidewalks.
Were you expecting it to be included in the software?
No, actually, I wasn't. I was surprised. One of the bidders said that we will do that as an extra piece, as an option. And I think we actually made good progress in getting the video, because the video was not the first proposal that they had. So they were going to do just the LiDAR, and we talked with them and said, you know, can you just strap a camera on while you're driving around? They said, yeah, we can do that. So we get video in addition to the more detailed assessment.
Unless I misunderstood, I know, actually, I think Ms. Fiore had one of these questions on the sidewalk and the pavement management system regarding sidewalks. I think you were at that capital meeting. I could be wrong. I thought you would raise that issue.
Question for sidewalks. I have problems with the prioritization of paving projects.
Okay.
What specifically are you referring to?
No, I, again, maybe I'm recalling it correctly. I thought when Capital had a discussion on this, one of the questions that came up was a module that could be added for sidewalks to be able to prioritize. I will go back. I won't hold this up because, again, that's fine. I myself will go back and look. That was just my understanding at the time, that to take kind of the individual process of an individual out of making those decisions, to have a system be able to make those decisions for you. So,
And Lisa, you could use the same math here to do sidewalks, certainly. So you need the assessment, and then you need a choice of conditions, whether you code them, repave them, rebuild them, or whatever, create them from scratch. Same math applies, and you can do the same type of analysis to prioritize sidewalks. But over on top of that, sidewalks, in my view, is more complicated because the roads, all the roads that we're going to maintain are there.
Yep.
And there are sidewalk pieces that aren't there. And the real challenge, I think, is how you prioritize new sidewalks. For example, when we did the VHB study a couple of years ago that included sidewalks, there are some interesting places in the southern part of town where there are neighborhoods that were subdivisions that were built with sidewalks. And one could actually build a new sidewalk between two of those neighborhoods and double the sidewalk mileage or whatever the people have accessible there with a fairly short piece of new sidewalk, which I think is high priority versus building a brand new sidewalk on a road that has none, that doesn't have any, doesn't lead to other networks, sidewalk or trail networks. So more complicated process, but we could do the same type of analysis.
again, I'm not going to hold it up, Sam. I had just made a note that there was, sidewalk module was mentioned, and I just wanted to see if it was approved. So again, I'm not going to hold this up. I will certainly go back and look over my notes and.
Well, we all know sidewalks are important to everybody, so more to come on sidewalks. But I think I'd like to conclude with, I think that this is a full circle for Sam. He has been promoting this for, I can't remember how many years. I remember on the project sitting there talking to Karen about it. So, sometimes it takes a while to bring things home, but it's like we have. And back to Ms. Fiore's comment as far as roads priority. So if we kind of look at where we are now, we spent a lot of money and basically had to stop with our normal road because of the downtown project for a couple of years. We did a contract in 19 and then we haven't done this since now. That's out for bid. So we've got that started. We've got this now going. And then next, I believe probably Capital would say that we've got some big projects to consider and see how we get those done. But I think we've made significant progress this fiscal year as far as getting back on track with getting our major problems fixed. Okay, anything else? Okay, so motion to get this right. Motion to approve the recommendation for the award of a pavement management system RFP to, it's called Beta Sam?
Beta Group.
Beta Group, to Beta Group.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna move and I'm gonna second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Congratulations, Karen. I hope this really helps you a whole lot. Do your job. Okay. Okay, so the next topic is the discussion of the extension of the charge from St. Mark's Street Park Working Group.
Madam Chair, can I apologize for interrupting. I spotted, if I'm reading this correctly, that I believe there's actually a quorum of the working group present because Bill Sines is up there. That's Marguerite's email.
Sounds like
Edward
4.
Grace at AOL, Mr. Farrington, Mr. Bennington, and myself. So either, and the quorum is 5 for us. So either Mr. Sines or Marguerite should move over to the YouTube, or I'll leave and rush home and watch it on YouTube to spare us any open meeting concerns.
Okay.
So I just didn't want to bolt out of the room and seem like I was being
So thank you
ungracious.
for coming up. So Marguerite and Bill, I hope that you guys are actually listening.
We have a volunteer.
Yeah.
Do we have a volunteer to
If they want to, if they want
leave
to
the Zoom and
talk.
jump on the YouTube? Okay, somebody left.
Oh,
Bill left.
All right, we're safe then. So I'm really sorry. I just didn't, I didn't want to create a problem. I didn't want to go bulking out.
Close call.
I really didn't know what I did wrong with saying that we're going to put her in charge. Okay,
I
so-
know, and I felt kind of rude.
No, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, I forgot to look. Do we know when the current charge expires?
At the last meeting, we voted to have the charge go through the end of this month.
This month?
Yes.
End
Yes.
of October.
And the reason for the request for the extension is that we were poised to have a public forum in the first week of October. Unfortunately, we had an administrative error in the manner of posting the meeting. Because even though really the nature of it was not the same as a meeting, it was more of a public forum. It was subject to the 48-hour rule for posting the meeting. So that didn't happen. And then we got close to the town meeting date, and logistically, we've had difficulty getting a new date. So what I was going to request is December 15th as an extended date. Now, I think that it kind of goes, as I was looking at the order of the agenda, this kind of goes with the next item in some ways. I think there's less, we have some more time, I think, to complete this. And I think December 15th is an appropriate balance between, on the one hand, since this working group started in February and then really went through a couple different iterations. I think that this additional time would be enough to have a couple meetings to do a public forum, and then to have time for discussion on the working group, and then to put together some form of a written recommendation by December 15th. I think that if you were to do just end of November or something like that, you're running into holidays. And I do hope that just because we've been going since February, that this can be a date, which would be then hopefully the last time I've come and asked for an extension.
Have you had a chance to talk about that with any other members of your working?
I discussed this with Marguerite earlier today, who's the chair, about December 15th as a date, and I think that she was okay with it, thinking that it was a practical date.
Because this is, are you referring to this as being the date that the working group is appointed until, or what do you?
That's a good question.
Because it says in the charge, all terms shall expire on June 30th, 23.
I think that's a good point. I don't think this really has to do with the term.
Okay, so
What, because the charge, there's a charge on the website.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's a date by which the select board would like some report back. right?
Oh, okay.
So that, and that has been other working groups, or like noise bylaw committee, groups like that have had these dates by which some deliverable is expected.
So we're actually not discussing the extension of a charge, we're discussing the extension of the receiving report
Delivery date. Yeah.
or the recommendation.
Yeah, and
I also don't see the date
There is nothing in the charge.
I never, I looked too, I didn't see the date
specifying a
either, that's why I
report.
was asking you what it was.
Did we update this charge at some point?
Yes.
Yes,
we did.
June 20.
Yeah, there have been a couple of these.
So you may be seeking simply to get some direction from the board as to when they expect to hear.
That's another way of putting it. And then I think it also bleeds into the next item in the agenda.
Okay, so why don't we table this piece of it and just go to the next one and then have this as part of the overall discussion as far as what our next steps are going to be. How about
Can I ask
that?
a quick question in regard to the-
Yes. Mhm, sorry.
Patricia Fiorentin, District. Could you please explain if the working group has a budget? If the working group is charged to allocate money, spending that budget, and if there is a budget, where is that money funded from?
I think the working group does not have a budget.
Right.
And so the answer to your second question is no, and then the third would be, the working group does not have a budget. And so then, because it doesn't, the answer to your second question was no, and
So the money that the working group did spend to hire a designer, where was that money
Well, that was-
allocated from?
it's from the select board. And that came from the DPW engineering line item.
It's the operating budget for fiscal year 23.
Okay, but it was spent by the working group. Because you didn't
Not-
vote on paying the bill until after the work was done and the bill was received, correct?
Not exactly correctly, but you're correct that the working group does not have a budget. So the approval for that expenditure came from the select board in August. And I can say, I did not anticipate that it would be a controversial thing, but I listened to the different viewpoints. And since that time, and one of the things that's been discussed is, would we seek any additional professional support or anything like that? I think based on some of the concerns that you and others expressed that, I know I have not come back with another request like that because I understand the concern.
So when the hearings are held, public hearing is held, and people put in their comments on the designs, which is what the public hearing is for, the way I understand it, then are those comments taken back to VHB to redesign? And if so,
Okay.
where's that money coming from?
Okay, so that's what I meant about the kind of the relationship between A and B. One of the things that's been a challenge, I think, for the working group is that there have been so many legitimate, appropriate questions about the entire project, land ownership, expenditures, et cetera, that all kind of eventually go together. But the narrow charge of the working group is to make a recommendation about the design for a possible park in the portion of the triangle, which is south of the relocated street. So that's the area that's subject to the, and I think Kathy, you can speak to it in further detail about the.
No, I understand. I understand what the park
Let me
is.
take a shot at this as far as what you asked. So the intent is that when the working group has its public forum, which is to be scheduled soon, that from that, they will then, as a group, conclude on what they believe the recommendation should be to select board as far as the design of the park. So right now, the intention is not to re-engage VHB until that happens.
Well, but that's only if those plans are approved by the town.
You're right, that form's got to result in a general agreement as to what, I guess, the majority of the working group believes should be the recommendation. They may say this is number one, this is number two, this is number 1, 2, 3, 4. There may be a fourth one that comes in, but the hope is that from that meeting, they will have a consensus as to what they want to recommend to the select board as far as design.
Just to back up a little bit, part of the whole The reason, the idea for the work group, it actually began in December of 2021, where actually it goes back to August of 2021, where the initial plans for the work in the St. Mark's Triangle, they were in a set of plans June 2021, all right?
Actually, no, I tend to disagree with that. The original concept for that plan was, for the version of the plan currently, was presented in a select board meeting on December 15th, 2020. It did not include the park, but that was the original plan for the parking lot and the road construction.
So there was a concept plan, and then just to kind of complete my thought here, the part of the idea of the working group was that in this original plan, there was a circular space, and the plan was originally to have a playground. And then the select board decided, I think in the summer of 2021, that it wasn't a good space for a playground because it was too close to Route 30. So then there was this just open question about what could go there. That's why the first draft of the working group charge had a the task was just to make a recommendation about what that circle filled, keeping the rest of the design filled. And then as this process has just in some ways become more complicated, and we thought about ways we could have a better process, then at some point after the annual town meeting in May, the select board expanded the charge to think of more broadly about, okay, kind of reimagine the whole design. What would be an appropriate design considering its proximity to the library and the old burial ground? And that's why we expanded the charge at that point, brought in 2 additional members. So I'm just.
No, I understand the need.
It's been hard to
I
have.
understand the need.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense because I know you guys are overtaxed with the amount of committees and such. I totally understand the need for a group. I'm just at this moment asking about the funding and the amount in what money that group is spending. And if those plans are adjusted during public hearing, will those plans be redesigned at a cost to the town by VHB?
So first, again, the working group hasn't spent any money, right? The working group had, well, because it has no budget.
So can we cut this off
okay.
and get into the actual discussion? And then, we can layer this back in, but let's get into this discussion as far as where we're going with this. But we did answer the question. We said they don't have a budget. Andrew, on behalf of working group, came to select board. We approved, I think it was a 3-2 vote to approve 7,000 for VHB. There's no plans right now to approve anymore. We need to see what this form results in. So that's got to take place first. So there's no plans today to ask VHB to do anything further.
Okay.
Okay, so let me try to tee this up because we need to operate with facts, right? So if I say anything wrong, correct me. I just want to make sure we've all got the facts as to where we are tonight so that we can make what we think is the appropriate decision for the next steps for the project. Okay, so we fully discussed the completion of the St. Mark's Street road work and the completion of the Pocket Park last at our May 31st meeting. That was the second meeting after town meeting. At that meeting, we agreed unanimously that we wanted to complete the project that would culminate in the relocation of St. Mark's Street and the building of a small park next to the library land. We also agreed on May 31st to the following. We would pursue a land swap with St. Mark's School, culminating in each party having a fee interest in the parcel that they would be using going forward. Andrew brought that up as the way to go, which is what we've done. We could expand, we would expand the charge of the St. Mark's Park Working Group, as we just discussed, to charge them with proposing a full design for the intended park, not just a circle. And 3, we would halt any further work on the street park until an archaeological dig contracted by St. Mark's School was completed to determine if there were any interments beneath the land on which the work was intended. So far, so good. This is May 31st, okay? Tonight is therefore the first time since May 31st that we have put the project on our agenda to decide next steps. Okay, we've talked about little things here and there in between, but not to talk about what to do now, okay? Since May 31st, the following has taken place. St. Mark's School has agreed to a land swap of the parcels that were included in the license agreement signed between the school and the town that allowed work to commence last year. The working group has met many times and is in the process of setting the date for a public forum to discuss the 3 park designs proposed by VHB and possibly more. The archaeological dig has been completed with a verbal report from the contractor that says there are no interments beneath the relevant land. There's things, he found things, but not interments. The contractor has finished his report and just this week submitted it to the Massachusetts Historical Commission for their review. Ms. Galligan has also corresponded this week with Cassandra Gascon, if I'm saying that right, of the Mass DOT, and updated her on where the project stands. Ms. Gascon replied to Ms. Galligan and confirmed that there is no official deadline on when the proposed park needs to be completed. The deadline that had been met was actually using the $290,000 in grant money, which we did. Okay, so the deadline to actually complete, there is no deadline. Okay, so we're not about to run afoul of that. Okay, so far so good. Ms. Galligan, you agree? Okay. All right, tonight our agenda item is to discuss the next steps the select board intends to take with respect to this project. Our DPW head, Ms. Galligan, has informed us that the current general contractor for the project, E.H. Perkins, intends to terminate its contract with the town at the end of the year. The contract I'm referring to is what we call the Berry Streets contract. Okay. Therefore, if we decide to not restart the project before year end, we will need to enter into a new contract for the completion of the project. You may recall that the contract with Perkins for the project included other projects, particularly finishing the town portion of the downtown road project, making changes to the Deerfoot Road Flag Road intersection, and the Park St. Mark Street project. So 3 things are included in that original contract. Based on feedback from those who live in the Deerfoot Road Flag neighborhood and others, the select board the select board agreed to cancel that project for now. Ms. Galligan worked with E.H. Perkins to effect change orders that eliminated the Flag Deerfoot project from the contract and added the needed work on the portion of Portable Road that fronts the public safety building. Because of the manner in which the Perkins contract was put together, that is 3 projects in 1 contract, it is not obvious what the cost of each portion is. To help us make a decision tonight as to when to restart the project, I did ask Ms. Galligan for information on trying to truly bifurcate the contract so we really understand what each component is, so we really know how much money is left in that contract for the park itself. And I didn't ask her to yesterday, so I think it's probably done.
It did send it, it just is not 100%.
Okay, so we're not going to talk about tonight because it needs to be looked at and reviewed, so we make sure that we are factual in it. So anyway, she's put together numbers that should help us as far as understanding where things stand with that contract. Okay.
There's one point where I think when you said it was 3 projects together, it's really, I think, 4 projects.
What's the 4th one?
Deerfoot Flag, St. Mark's Triangle, and then I think 2 different components of the downtown project. Is that correct? Or just 1?
We get downtown at Newton, but that's all, and Porterville's.
Yeah.
Porterville is new, right? You substituted Deerfoot.
There was always a piece to Porterville, we added paving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
so
not,
if
it's a
you're
minor
counting-
detail. It's a minor.
All right, so we'll say 4 then, okay?
Okay.
All right, everybody so far? Okay, so with all of the aforementioned history tonight, we need to decide whether to move forward with the current contract to finish the road work and other related infrastructure for the project before the contract terminates at the end of the year. If we decide to go forward with the current contract, what do we want to do about the contemplated land swap? It seems to me that we've got 2 choices if we decide to go forward. We continue using the license agreement as the basis for restarting the work, or we hold another special town meeting at which the town meeting is asked to approve the land swap prior to doing this. So I don't know what other choices we have. Anybody's got another idea? Pipe in here. So that's what I think our 2 choices are as far as trying to finish that work at the end of the year. Okay. If instead we decide collectively that we do not want to do any further work on the land until the land swap is approved by town meeting, and we don't want to call a special town meeting to effect that, then the decision would seem to be to wait until the spring annual town meeting and place the proposed land swap article on that warrant. If the article passes, then we will restart the project work shortly thereafter. If it does not pass, then we will need to make another decision, which is whether to go forward on the project using the license agreement.
And if in fact we do hold until next spring, that means it sounds like that the contract would have to be renegotiated, rebid. With the
Yes.
the relocation of the street there.
Okay, so come on up, Karen.
Just, so I just today talked to the contractor. Based on weather, at this point, there's a good chance that they might not be able to finish all of the contract anyway. So if they had something left in the spring, they don't finish, then they could come back in the spring and do the triangle piece, right, that intersection. However, if we do want to wait till the land swap is done, and that's all the way officially approved, they can take that off, that they're still willing to come back, do obviously the work, the rest of the work in the contract. And we did not let the road contract yet for the one that we wanted to let it for this fall, but between the weather, whether or not that intersection was coming up, and then trying to add a few things for the school. The contract's put together, but I didn't advertise it for bid because I wanted to make sure what we were doing with this.
Yeah, I don't know what contract you're talking about.
Regular roadway maintenance
The
contract.
$1.5 million contract
That capital planning.
Just plain old us. Okay, so that is not going out to bid right now.
It has not gone out to bid. It's ready to go, except I didn't know whether we should be putting in the intersection. So we put it in as an adult. But that was the adult. We also want to add, Trotter has some work that they want to have
Okay,
done.
let's.
So, but it could just be put into that easy enough. That's all.
What intersection?
The intersection of St. Mark's Street and 85.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. One more thing, Karen, stay for a second. Okay, so what I said doesn't sound like it's totally correct. I thought you had said to me that E.H. Perkins says either I do it this year or we're out of here as far as the St. Mark's Pocket Park.
Yes, that was their original, because they thought they were going to be able to finish all the work in town and they wouldn't have anything left to do except that. And they didn't think it would be to come back for that. It wasn't going to be used. They had other work lined up basically for spring. But now between weather and other projects, they're actually behind. So they might have to come back in spring anyway. So then they could do it.
So they're not going to finish the downtown road project and the Porterville South project, is what you're saying, but
They're trying to, but likely they'll only finish the downtown and Newton Street piece.
So this is good news, right? Because
Well,
there is a
depends.
possibility.
It depends on, yeah, which way
There's
you
a
look at it.
well, the possibility in that you could sequence things so that there would be a town meeting vote on the land swap, and then the work, at least on the roadway portion, could be done under the more favorable contract that we currently have. There's at least a possibility of that.
Yes.
Karen, based on what you know about prices today, and I know this is putting you on the spot, do you believe that if we had to start all over with a new contract for the work envisioned with St. Mark Street being moved, finished, all the things there, that we would be paying more than what's in this E.H. Perkins contract?
If the intersection got moved into another contract with other work also.
Well, okay, so you can caveat that if you want to. I didn't say that.
Oh, okay, that's what I was trying to understand. So if they were gonna just do the intersection, no other work, I don't think it'd be as favorable as it is now. We have, you're required to have escalation clauses for asphalt, so it does even out. Right now, we're paying extra because we bid it at a very low rate. And so we have to pay that escalation. So when we bid, if it went down, then we actually get money back for the asphalt too. So
For the current contract.
yeah, whenever they do it, it's based on the day they pave and what the amount we put in for liquid asphalt tons.
So you really can't say whether it costs more or less. if we
Right,
start over.
it's just a quantity. So we have such little quantity, but if you took that, the St. Mark Street intersection and you added in our other road maintenance work, it would be favorable again.
Can I ask Karen?
I want you to stay. It's
Yeah.
your-
Just a quick question. So if the board waited until spring and then if it's not a favorable town meeting vote, then is there a penalty to withdraw that piece of the contract?
They did not talk about a penalty on it, no.
Sorry, I didn't go on turn, just.
No,
Before they walked away, I wanted to ask.
So to be clear, if there was if the land swap failed, the 2/3 vote we needed to actually approve the land swap failed last Saturday in March, right? The contract, we could go to the contractor without penalty and say, you can't do this, we're cutting that piece of it off at this point, and there's no consequence, financial consequence.
They haven't, they've talked about taking the change order, taking it off without consequence previously. I can't guarantee they won't change their mind. But it's not something they've mentioned, and it's not something in our contract. I don't believe that it's a new contract, so I'm not used to it yet.
Andrew, Chelsea, Sam, questions for?
One follow on that, I would think that if that scenario happened where the land swap didn't happen and we had the contract hanging out there, it would seem to me that they would not be eager to have that contract still open and would be more inclined to say, okay, we'll accept a change order to remove that piece of work and you don't have to pay for it kind of thing, versus leaving it open in the hope they'll get a little extra work, which is not very desirable work.
Right.
At that point.
I
think,
agree.
so.
Also,
I'm more for Karen, but
Okay, so no more questions for Karen at this point?
at this point, don't go too far.
Okay. Okay, is everybody agrees on the basic decision we're gonna make tonight, which is to either go forward now. Remember, we don't have the final report from Mass Historical either. We think it's a favorable report that would allow not doing anything to prohibit, so we don't have it, right? And there were things found in the ground, not determined, so we don't have that final report either. That may be 6 weeks to 2 months away. It just got submitted, so we don't have that either, so keep that in mind too. Okay, so those are the facts we're gonna use tonight to make a decision on. Okay, so now let's ask for the comment.
So I guess we can have-
Joan Pearson, 101 Newton Street. First of all, I just have a comment about the design and then forcing the committee, the working committee, to have signed by December 15th. I think it was fairly clear at the meeting that I attended about the design that even the members on the committee were very upset with the process, that there was no budget for literally implementing the design, the 3 different designs that were shown. And to me, and I mentioned at that meeting, I was a registered landscape architect here in Massachusetts. I practiced for around 12 years. I worked as a Saki associate, among other places. You don't do a design without a budget. You just simply don't say, here's my wish list with your municipality, or you're an individual homeowner, you're redoing the kitchen, you're doing your entire backyard. You don't just say, here are all the things I would like to see. And a designer says, great, I'll put a design together for you. And no budget is there. The taxpayers aren't like a little faucet that you just turn on full blast and whatever, everybody's heart desires, that goes on the plan. So I think it's very important to hold off, to not rush the committee to like put something together. I think people at that meeting, committee members were very concerned, some of them. What's the budget? How can we save? And I think the guy from VHB said, well, you don't have to use this material, not an overall design thing, but instead of using granite, you could use brick here. I mean, it was all relative, but you didn't have that price overall. I also think the designs that were presented were basically the same design, the same wish list items, just moving around. They weren't different concepts.
There wasn't one of a concept where it's a grassy park with trees and maybe one monument there, one plaque. It was the same thing. So I think it would be a really poor decision of the board to say, force them to do, let's talk about the 3 designs that were given that we paid $7,000 for.
So tonight, the decision we're making really is not about the design of the park. The decision tonight is to whether we restart the work on the infrastructure, moving the road, that piece of it. We're not dealing tonight with the actual park itself as far as what's going to go into that will come later. And but point well taken that it's hard to make a decision, sometimes design if you don't know what the cost is. The cost is relevant to making decisions. So we get that. But that input, I think, is more relevant to the forum as far as what they need to try to make decisions. But we do appreciate what you said.
And I also have just a comment in general about moving the pavement. Were there actual traffic studies done that you did traffic studies and you said, hey, there's so much traffic on this road, the turning, it's hard, that this necessitates moving the pavement and this whole project starting on the money we're paying? I actually, when I was a landscape architect, I got pulled into, when I actually worked for the town of City of Newton for a while, and they needed more bodies to do traffic studies where you literally were sitting, I don't know how that's done now, you were sitting there with a board and you had maybe 4 people in the car and your traffic intersections at different times of the day, the same one. And one person at the board, they are responsible for clicking this clicker, how many cars are turning left, on like 2 hours of cycles of the light. And somebody else did the clicker on the right and somebody did straight. They were actually assessing that time, it was a long time ago, how much traffic is using this road? Because if there wasn't enough.
It wasn't a traffic concern, it was a
alignment
flooding.
concern?
No, the floods there, because when it rains, like flooded the other night. When it rains, so it's a problem with flooding. And then second, the turn, if you're going north, if you were a fire truck, it's more than a 90-degree turn, it's like 135 degrees. So the fire trucks would have a hard time making that left turn. They had to go up that road instead of coming up Common Street. So it wasn't the amount of traffic, the road's not that used. It was the fact that it has a water problem that was trying to be solved there. Anybody disagree with that? No.
Nope.
And literally moving the pavement would solve the water problem, not regrading the road, digging out, putting in a much greater gravel base.
We're not engineers on this board.
Well, the turning radius was
Excuse me?
relevant. The turning radius of having a turn that's a safer turn for a fire truck was relevant to the placement of where the road. I mean, one consideration is just that I thought it's already there, so
The road.
the current layout of the proposed road has already been put there. It's there right now. So
Stormwater structures are in there now as well.
Well, I guess I would like to, as far as the timeline of things and why I was talking about the design, that I think if the roadway needs to be done, that gets done. Don't force the working committee to give you something by December 15th and go trying to push it out as far as you could to give you more time. That gets tabled until after town meeting. And so it's more, I guess, that contract for what happens with the roadway, but then we're going to run out of time to do it now anyway.
So we appreciate your suggestions, so thank you. Come on up, Ms. Betty.
Beach area 58 Flag Road, member of the planning board, speaking as private citizen. Just thinking about what the previous speaker was saying, for those of us who've lived in town also for a number of years, the intersection was moved once before, and if you look on Google Maps or Google Earth, somewhere between 2000, and Sam, you may remember, and a lot of you guys have been here 25 years, somewhere around between 2002 and 2008, the intersection was moved just slightly to improve the turning radius, actually. And so I get kind of concerned when I hear that we're changing the intersection to improve the turning radius, because I remember when that intersection was lined up, it actually was a little bit north of the St. Mark's driveway across the street, and then it was lined up, which it kind of made a funny sort of a turn, but I thought that seemed to make some sense. If you're at St. Mark's and you want to travel across the road, it's straight across the road. Maybe that was a safety reason or something, but it's just kind of too bad that we didn't fix the drainage problem at the time. But the road intersection was already moved. I'd like to know if this drainage problem is going to help the library, because speaking to some of the library trustee members, they've said that every month it's on their agenda, flooding at the library. So do we know that the drainage is going to help them?
The engineers claim that is, and the reason they didn't fix it previously was because we didn't have the infrastructures with the Main Street project and with the public safety building, which allowed us to connect the stormwater drainage to the east side of Corderville Road, across Route 30 and down to the stormwater inlet, which is near the south of the public safety complex. So we didn't have the other pieces, and we didn't have any place to put the water, even if we collected it up there. So this is the final piece that collects the whole thing. And again, I'm not an engineer, but I've heard a number of them comment that they believe that this will actually capture the water that previously had been coming down the hill through the library parking lot and into the library basement, diverting it across the street down Porterville Road to the right stormwater entry.
Okay. Is there a report or something? I mean, does somebody look at that? Is that part of the VHB report or something?
I've not seen that in a particular report. I've heard engineering conversations in various meetings, including library meetings. The library has looked at a number of options to deal with that.
Yeah.
And this seems to be the best solution. And
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I mean, I think that this, members of the Southborough community really need to get something more out of this project, and that would be wonderful if the flooding stops the library. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, if the town doesn't vote at town meeting for the land swap, would you move the road? So why would you move the road until the town votes for it?
So again, it's a little bit chicken and egg, right?
Because
So
it's possible you might say, we just want to move this intersection. I've made a suggestion in the past to decommission the end of that road, that maybe we don't actually need it because people are speeding on it. It may not be necessary. It's a cut through, and now we've got better, with complete streets now, we've got, better streets for traveling. But I'm just wondering why you would do the work without town meeting approval, because that involves, the swap means you would need the road. If you don't get the swap, you wouldn't need the road.
that's what we're trying to decide tonight. So, you're asking about something that is down the road, so a lot has to happen before we get to that point. So that we cannot answer tonight.
Okay. So I would request that you don't do the work on the road until town meeting weighs in, because it may not be needed. And I understand there's money on these contracts. Maybe they can be used somewhere else. So, thank you.
Okay, let's bring over Ms. Houlihan.
Hi again, Marnie Houlihan, 26 Clifford. I am speaking in my planning board capacity. I just wanted to remind the select board that on September 19th of this year, we wrote a letter about the scenic road stone wall removal that didn't have the planning board approval on both St. Mark's Street and School Street. The contract right now for St. Mark's doesn't include any remediation for the stone wall replacement that was removed illegally on a scenic road. So I know you probably need to discuss this, but there is a process, and we've asked you to consider that process. None of that mitigation or what we would request of the town to likely replace the stone wall at the St. Mark's has not been included in the contract. So I think that's an important notation for you all to have.
Thank you. Ms. Fiore.
Again, sorry, notes. Patricia Fiore, 10 River Street. So in regard to what the two previous speakers mentioned, if we go back to the December 15th, 2020 select board meeting, where the original plans for the parking lot and intersection move were discussed, it was brought up that it was the puddle. And I believe Ms. Galligan drew on the plan puddle, and it's labeled puddle. So we know that there was a water issue, and I don't think we really had an answer to Joanne's question about whether anyone considered regrading that intersection and fixing the drainage or the puddle there versus spending $2 million-ish to move an intersection. And in regard to the fire trucks, I find it really, really hard to believe that a fire truck leaving the public safety building on Route 85 would go up 85, no matter what that intersection looks like, to take a left-hand turn to go back to the townhouse or the museum or the church. It seems more likely that that fire truck would go up 85, take a quick left, and then up the ramp that everyone else uses to get into that area.
They would be going to the St. Mark's housing back there. So you take a left and then the sharp
Well,
right.
but
back to St. Mark's
again,
house.
they could go straight that way because there is a left-hand turn directly behind the museum that takes you to that housing. So there isn't a real need to spend $2+ million to move an intersection because of fire truck access, because there is proper fire truck access. And there isn't a real need to move an intersection because of puddle. Seems like one could find a better solution than moving an intersection to solving a puddle. Next point. When we were having the discussion earlier, you all were referring to the park construction and whether you were voting to spend money on the park construction. And when Ms. Galligan was talking, she was only referring to the intersection. So could you just clarify what exactly you're voting on, whether it is including both the intersection construction and the park, or one or the other?
Intersection construction. We're trying to decide tonight whether we can continue the work that is in the DH purchase contract that relates to moving the road, and all the things. And so we're not talking about tonight actually building the park because the working group has got to finish its work first. So tonight we're trying to make a decision knowing that winter's coming, thinking until Karen clarified that DH Perkins said either I'm going to do it now or I'm out of here, which is now not true. So we just decided what our next step is now that we have gotten certain things done that we said we need to get done before we restart this project.
Along that line, the original contract had 3 or 4 pieces to it. And we know that one of those pieces has been removed at the request of the town, that being the intersection of Deerfoot and Flag. That money was allocated to a different project. So it is feasible that if you needed to complete this contract, you could reassign that portion of money from the intersection to another project to complete the project, complete the contract, correct?
Feasible.
Okay. I also want to clarify that we currently don't have any memorandum of understanding nor signed document that St. Mark's has agreed to a land swap. Is that true?
That's true.
Given all this information, I strongly urge you to put the entire project on hold until the town owns this land. Mass general laws forbid you from spending public money on private property, which until that property is done in a land swap at town meeting and approved by town meeting residents, you can't spend the money. I don't see any legal course for spending the money. And so in order not to create more of a mess than I think this town is already in, I strongly urge you to put the entire thing on hold.
Ms. Houlihan still has her hand up.
So Marnie, I don't know if your hand is still up from before or it's back up again. So it's back. Okay. So there's that. Come on up.
Kevin Miller, 18 Latticequama, and be really quick. I just want to bring you back to the good news. I think I just heard from Ms. Galligan. I think she just paved you a wonderful off-ramp to not hold another special town meeting, not go plowing ahead in a way that might get you clobbered, and hold, get it straightened out. Maybe some of the things with the budget and what monies are actually available for the park, that aspect of it may come clearer over a few months. I don't hear people in town picketing, we must have the park now. I think they'll be content to wait. This park, hopefully will be for a real long time. So as much as I sympathize with my long-suffering fellow members of the working group who would like to get it done.
You came in the middle.
That's right, I did. And so I've been spared on it. And it's been contentious, we've had some rough nights, right? But I'm also, when I signed up for this, I thought, you know what? This is forever. And it's a real chance to actually make a big difference in downtown. And so personally, I want to do it right. I want the final report from MHC. I think there's some elements of that actually may influence my conception of what the park should be, but I want their final answer. I would like to know if you could ever kind of figure out a little bit, like roughly what the money would be, because I'm a taxpayer too and worry about my tax rate. So you've just been given this wonderful opportunity. I mean, I thought that was the greatest news I've heard all night, like here's a way to plausibly without loss to the town. Because I was very sympathetic. I mean, I listened to Sir Purple on a number of occasions talk about the grant thing and the problem of we spent the money we had to spend, right? So we're in the clear on that. And, it sat there for this long. You could sit a few months longer. And then I think you have a real opportunity to kind of do it the way that I think most people would think is the right way. And also, we're going to get a good result. I know we are.
Okay,
So
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we have exhausted public comment. Okay. So before we get started, let me just take a strong vote. Is there anyone on the select board that wants to not complete this project?
Before town meeting vote?
No, I said just truly not complete it, go back, put it back the way it was, return the $290,000 to the state. Is there anyone that's in that camp? We weren't May 31st. I just want to make sure you haven't changed your mind so that we know that part is settled as far as we do. So we want to complete the project in one form or another. Okay. All right. So now timing. So I'm going to start this part of it. I can tell you I've changed my mind. I, until a couple weeks ago, thought we should go ahead and try to do the work that could be done by the end of the year, because I thought we were going to lose the contract. And I really thought with inflation, that it was going to cost a lot more if we wait to the spring. Who knows what inflation's done to the prices that are into this. At this point, they go up, they go down, whatever. I didn't know. And even then, I changed my mind before I heard what Ms. Galligan said tonight, as far as H. Perkins, as long as we got more work left in spring, which is like we're going to, because of their behind times, that we can keep this contract alive. They can pick it up after town meeting if we get the land swap approved and do the work. So that does help what I changed my mind about. But the really reason I changed my mind was going back to, again, the separation of what the role of town meeting is from the role of the five of us on the select board. I have had it reminded to me several times in the last 2 weeks that the purview of town meeting is to approve a land swap, period. That is their job. It is not our job to find a way to work around that, even if it's legal, which the license agreement is. It's just not, it's form over substance. Yes, we could do it. We did do it, but I'm now back in the camp that it really is the town meeting that needs to fully vet this land swap that St. Mark's has agreed to do, and give us the approval that we need to go forward with this project. I hate it's not going to get done if this is beside, I hate that the pile of dirt. I mean, it's ugly, right? I hate it, but as Ms. Miller said, time flies. We'll get through it. Snow will cover it up, hopefully. And then we'll have our spring town meeting, and hopefully by then we will have maybe made progress in convincing people that this is the right thing to do. We're going to have a nice park in the end, and that people can enjoy, etc. So I've come around to saying that I think we really should not do anything further until we have the land swap totally done. So that's one. So everybody's gonna have a chance to, and then we'll vote, as far as what your viewpoint is, but, that's where I would go. So, Chelsea? you wanna go
I think it's a great opportunity for the kids to go sledding off the dirt piles and give somewhere to park.
See? Oh my God.
I'm just trying to lighten the mood a little bit.
Right on there, you're fine, right?
Yeah, not good for a playground. but good for
Sledding,
sledding.
on.
I'm in no
Yes.
rush to go ahead and do more work on this without having a land swap, because I don't want to be sitting at town meeting in the spring, having the work done and have it fail, and then we're back to where we were a year ago. So I'm good for it.
I am similar. I'm not comfortable at this point. We heard town meeting. I think to move forward without the land swap would risk a land swap even being able to take place in the spring if we move forward. And if town meeting voted no, then we have again spent money that there is clearly voices are heard. So I would not move forward. Even our license, or I would have recommended having a special town meeting before we even consider doing this. So being able to, thank you, Karen, being able to have an opportunity to wait until the annual, even save the taxpayers another $5,000. So.
Some time too.
Yeah.
Sam?
I remain eager to get it done, but Karen's news tonight actually has opened the possibility of not having to push so hard to risk losing the contract that we have. So I'm aligned with your comments, Kathy and others, that let's move forward. Let's get the land swap, legal papers done, and focus on communicating for the town meeting in the spring, and let the working group come up with a recommendation as planned and see where we are at that point.
I agree. I've also done a lot of thinking about this, and I thought that the news that Karen reported is also relevant. That's why I said I thought it was good news. A lot of other comments I could make about this whole project because I'm very interested in it, but I think maybe I'll just reserve for another time.
May I make one suggestion? Absolutely. And I should have said it, and I apologize. Maybe we also take this time between now and the spring to, even though the trigger hasn't happened yet for planning board and their report, maybe we just move down that road and let them do this. So that's not something else that's hanging over the head of the process as it moves forward.
There are 2 projects there that you need to deal with.
Yeah, so be proactive and just do it.
What project? What are you referring to there?
The School Street and this
The
intersection.
walls.
Yeah.
Stone walls.
But the report specifically that's required, Mark, what is the trigger for the planning board? Again, they generate a report.
I thought it
It has
was
to do
when
with
you're
the
applying
road.
for a road to be accepted as a public way.
So again, I'm not sure of the specifics. I just know the
Let me go
report is
back,
required.
as you're talking, it wasn't coming to me as quick as I was hoping.
Yeah,
So
permit
let me go
for
back and
signature.
take a look at it.
Yeah, they have to, and they brought it up a few times too, Andrew.
Yeah,
That
okay.
there's this report that's required, and Jay Talman said we haven't hit the trigger yet.
My-
So I would just.
I'm just gonna, my recollection is to consider whether a road will be accepted as a public way. I think so. Is that, no?
No, I think it's something different.
It's something different.
Yeah.
So can you
Yes.
let us know?
Yes.
So we do this right, what we're supposed to do as far as the planning board goes, so we get that.
Be
part done too.
proactive, yeah.
Right. Okay, so now going back to the working group extension charge, I'm not sure we need to do that. You heard what Ms. Pearson said, which is don't be arbitrary about this, give them the time. We know that you're appointed to June of 23 as far as who's on the working group. So maybe does not give an arbitrary deadline as far as your report goes, let the working group do its job, and let us know when they're ready to come in front of us, instead of saying December 15th, be here.
This is the equivalent of a life sentence.
Well, everyone's probably going, please, let's make it 12:15.
Let it be done.
I just think
Well,
that
something.
having it available for town meeting though would be very helpful in this
I agree.
discussion. So,
I'm
you
not
know,
assuming
But
it's
at least
gonna
let's
go.
have a, we should have some type of.
Why don't we do December 15th and see what, as it gets closer, we've extended how many times, we have the opportunity to extend it
Even an
again.
interim report,
Yeah,
just an update.
just so we know where we're at.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, everybody agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this in two motions to be very clear of what we decide tonight. So let's do that one first. That one's easy. Okay, so the motion is to request that the working group submit an interim report as far as their work to the select board no later than December 15th, 2022.
So move.
Second discussion. Okay, all in favor? Okay, 5-0. Okay, now, the next motion is to basically continue to not do any work on this project at all until the actual land swap has been approved by town meeting. Simple as that.
So move.
Second, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, we'll agree with it, 5-0. Oh, okay. And look at time it is.
We got 2 more hours. What are we gonna do?
We have public comment.
Okay, so yeah, we're back to
Report on that at
the-
the next meeting.
Okay, so we're back to our
Let's
second
talk
public
about
comment.
the
So,
Hopkins
Ms. Pearson?
now that we're here.
Okay, now this public comment is for something that we have discussed tonight. Just so you know.
Well, I was curious because of the, I forget the contractor who's doing, you know, the downtown. Yes, and Newton Street. I'm just wondering if they are gonna be able to finish, like at least make the road a little bit better, that section on Newton Street before the winter comes, because
Newton
it's,
Street.
yeah.
Okay, well, we haven't talked about the Newton Street project, so that's fine to bring that up. Ms. Galligan's here, so can you answer that, Karen?
I can't hear her at all.
Okay, I can just come.
Well, the
So
Newton
come on
Street
up.
water main.
The Newton Street, I don't think, well, I think it's tied to this, they're tied to the sidewalks and all of that. It's really difficult. It's like an obstacle course when you're driving.
So Ms. Pearson, it is hard, it really is hard. And you, why don't you sit down
Okay.
and let us ask Karen the question.
Yeah,
you
I'm
think you're
very-
asking, so everybody in the audience can hear us.
Okay.
So she lives on Newton Street, so she's asking about the road work on Newton Street between now and the end of the year. What is the timetable? What's going to be done?
But wait, not the part, like I'm at the opposite end, the part by the medical center, the part that is the worst right now where they're putting in the sidewalks, and it's an obstacle course. So I was just wondering with the projects and with Healy's timeline.
That'll be part of the downtown, the final paving of the downtown, they're planning on trying, that is the one thing they're definitely sure they'll get done this year.
Okay, good. I just was hoping it wasn't gonna be, you know, the cans in the middle and all that all winter long. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like Ms. Houlihan, she must come. Okay, so bring Marty over again, please.
The third time is a charm. So Marnie Houlihan, 26 Clifford. I'm speaking on my personal capacity. So good evening, Chairwoman Cook and the select board members. I wrote a letter to this board this morning and felt it important to convey my personal appeal for the public discussion on the Hopkinton water situation and resolution. I have received response from that letter from Ms. Cook, Mr. Stivers, and Mr. Butler regarding my comments, which essentially revolve around keeping this discussion in the public forum. All content was relevant, the response content that is, and I think I should not be the only person to benefit from that content. So I'd like you to first consider releasing my emails as well as your responses, as well as in some venue for others to read. And then the second point that I just want to make is I advocate for public conversations on our town resources and public opinion to drive the decisions how Southborough would react to the request. Water is no longer a commodity, and we must treat it as a precious resource. If you are so compelled to remove the public discussions from the Public Work Planning Board and Capital, which was initially suggested to hold the discussions and produce recommendations on June 14th, I urge this select board to ensure conversations are held in open public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments? All right, see none.
So I just wanted to let you know that that based on my 60-day requirement in my contract. I'm resigning my position. January 6th will be my final day here. Appreciate the opportunities I've had. I got to work with John Boland when he hired me. Had great department heads, great team of people down at the DPW. But at this point, I am deciding that I'm gonna life's short. And there are no guarantees. And if I don't do something and pursue a new passion that I have now, I might not have that opportunity. So thank you very much, but I just want to let you know.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?